Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the NXTGEN Racing Porsche Cayman 718 GT4 Cup Day. Today's event is a one-off as brought to you by the NXTGEN Racing team in collaboration with the SimGrid for what is expected to be a fantastic event full of fast and furious racing, as we always do love it. Now, last week, of course, we had the Writer Engineering Track Day, where we're looking at the GT3 Lamborghini Gallardo around Monza, but today we're taking a step down to the GT4s for some fast and furious action around a circuit, which I'm sure many of you will know and many of you will love. And for the uninitiated, we've got a nice tight and twisty circuit, and we can expect to have plenty of battling action. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. Let's talk about tonight's schedule. So in approximately 20 minutes time, we'll be getting underway. We're qualifying at 7:30 according to British Summer Time or UTC +1. That'll be a 15-minute session where all of our drivers will be expected to go out on the circuit and set the fastest possible lap in order to position themselves for qualifying. Position themselves for the race, I should really say. As of 2:45 the hour afterwards, so 8:45 British Summer Time, that's when the race will start. A 60-minute race where our drivers are expected to push as fast and furiously as possible and see who is going to be the winner of the Cup Day event. Now, your commentary team consists of solely myself today. I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and you can watch this broadcast on my Twitch channel at TX141 on twitch.tv. Alternatively, you can tune into this broadcast on the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel or the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook page. We've got three broadcast avenues tonight, and you can tune in via any of those. But enough about the schedule and about myself, let's talk about the track. So the track today is Snetterton in Norfolk in the United Kingdom, or specifically in England. You can see from the circuit diagram here, as provided to us by Wikipedia, an absolutely brilliant circuit full of tight and twisty corners. We start off on the centre straight before taking a long run through Riches into Montreal, and then we've got the tighter section of the circuit starting off with Palmer into Agostini, and then we've got Hamilton followed by the Oggies and Williams corners, and then we've got the Bentley straight all the way down to the Brundle-Nelson combination, and then last but not least we've got Bombhole, Coram and Murray's completing the lap. Now, of course, if at any point you do feel as though Snetterton's not providing you with the racing action, be sure to let me know in the chat of the Twitch, but I reckon it is going to provide all the fast and furious action that you do come to expect. A circuit used throughout the series of British Touring Car Championship in particular, BTCC, and indeed we're using it here today. What of the fact we have got the upcoming round of the BTCC 2021, which is being held at Snetterton this coming weekend. So it's quite appropriate we're racing GT4 class cars around the circuit where near equivalent GT4 class cars are being raced this coming weekend in the United Kingdom. Now, what about the rules? Well, in general, all drivers are required to drive the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. However, the drivers are welcome to tune their cars as per their personal preference. So we have a standard balance of performance, but then our drivers are allowed to tune the cars in terms of how they've got the rear set up, the brakes set up, you name it, our drivers are allowed to pick it. As for the race itself, there's a mandatory pit stop window, which is 10 minutes in length, and within that window, our drivers make one pit stop where they must refuel 1 litre of fuel minimum. Now, whether they choose to change tyres or not, that's entirely up to them, but they must put in 1 litre of fuel and they must make that pit stop. If they do not, then they'll be facing disqualification from the race result. But without further ado then, away from the rules and the circuit and all the boring stuff with regards to the schedule and the commentator, let's go to the circuit and get warmed up. We're just shy of 15 minutes to go before qualifying gets underway. So as you can see right now, we've currently got Scattergood making his way around the circuit, just taking his time out of the right-hander there, and now in the long run down towards the left-hander there. But we can see that Scattergood making his way around the circuit. Indeed, a number of our drivers right now getting themselves warmed up very nicely in preparation for the race ahead. Now, we've got a few familiar faces. Some of you will remember from last week, for example, that we once again do have Mike Heisner, who's just making his way around. The American who last time out had a very difficult race at Monza in the previous track day event, but looking to bounce back and have some fortuitous action once again. As we say hello to our viewers in the chat, such as Zeronic and Sweelurb on our Twitch chat, and we hope you guys are doing well. And to everybody tuning in, we hope you're having a great week so far, whether it be Tuesday. We're almost at the hump day, and then we've only got a couple more days to go. But switching away from Heisner, we've also got Matt Acton, who's currently making his way out of the pit lane by the looks of things, although we did have a bit of a glitch camera there. So in fact, I think the camera crew were just trying to find Matt out on circuit, so not quite able to find him as per the previous expectation. But now they've got him clearly in their sights, and they're able to follow him around on circuit, and we can definitely see Matt making his way around. We've also got drivers such as we take a look through here, we've got Jacopo Rampazzo here, which is going to be quite a mouthful, but the Italian driver, the 542 numbered car there, we're going to be referring to him as Rampazzo from this point onwards, making his way to the paddock, but currently sat there and waiting and ready to go. But all of our drivers just getting themselves sighted in, and really we don't have any favourites for tonight. Remember, this is an open event, this is not part of a championship, this is just an open event in order to introduce those who are not initiated with the Next Gen Racing community, to get them involved and get them brought up to speed, because we do have some upcoming championships along the way. Most importantly, the upcoming GT3 series, so this gives some newer faces the opportunity to feel what it's like to race as part of a Next Gen Racing event, and for the older faces within the community, it gives them a chance to have a racing event where there's less pressure on them. It's a one-off. As we see Exposito making his way around the circuit right now, the Spaniard coming out the left-hander there and charging down towards another corner. He's going all the way down right now, down the Bentley straight into the left-hander known as Brundle, before going into the right-hander of Nelson. Well, we believe that's at least what our camera's telling us there, although we may be a little bit incorrect in that one. In fact, my apologies, folks. It's been a little while since I've last looked at Snetterton, so I do need to very quickly get myself back up to scratch. And feel free to let me know in the chat as well if there's anything we need to fix on the stream. We did have some technical issues last time out, but we got those resolved all the same. But without further ado then, what we're going to do is we're going to jump on board with one of our drivers as they take us around for a lap, and that'll give us a feel for what it's like riding on board with one of these GT4 machines. And we're going to jump on board here with Marcel Weber, the German, making his way down the start-finish straight now into turn 1. As we hop to the onboard camera here, you can see it flying through the right-hander combination there, going a bit wide, in fact getting caught out and understeering off the circuit. They're carrying a bit too much speed as he makes his way down into the braking zone for Montreal here. The hairpin corner, that is turn number 2, and now he's got the long run up to the left-hander of Palmer as he makes his way all the way along here, going into that left-hander right now. You can see just coming gently down on the brakes here, bringing himself through the corner, and now he's going to be heading up toward Agostini as he goes up towards that corner. Of course, the circuit just gradually juttering out to the right a little bit, but the braking board's now coming up, and he'll be braking at that 100-metre board indicated by the 2 dashes before going through what is effectively another hairpin style corner, albeit not as tight an apex as what he experienced back at Montreal. And now he's got the long run up towards Hamilton, or a short run by comparison with what he's had. Through left-hander there, which was more of a lift rather than a braking point, and now into the right-hander of Oggies, and he's going to follow that all the way round to Williams before coming onto the Bentley straight. And as you can see, as he makes his way out of Oggies up towards Williams here, it's a case that he's got a little bit more circuit width to play with at that point, although our drivers do have, of course, to be wary of the track limits, and they'll be subject to penalties if they accrue too many track limit incursions. And as he makes his way down the long Bentley straight now, the longest straight on the circuit, almost as long as the centre straight, but a little bit longer than it in fact, and now he's coming towards the braking zone here as he goes under the Snetterton board for Brundle into Nelson, the left into right combination, which we all love seeing in BTCC, before going now out of the corner of Nelson through Bombhole. It's coming up on the right hand side, and then he's going to be following it all the way around to Coram. Coram, a big sweeping right hand here, a deceptively sweeping corner. As you see, starts the corner. When does the corner end? You can't see the end quite yet. He's just got to be very patient on the throttle and then build up the speed as he comes out the corner, and then coming down to the braking zone for Murray's there, getting a little bit hesitant on the accelerator, but you can understand why as he now makes his way to complete a lap. Does Weber. Very nice lap there from the German as he's making his way across the line. And with just under 12 minutes to go, we're just going to take a look away from Weber for the time being and look at some of the other drivers who are racing tonight. And we are expecting a very sizable grid tonight. We had approximately 46 sign-ups overall, so we are potentially expecting to see a good number of drivers turn up here. We currently do have at trackside, just to give you an idea, approximately 25 drivers, although we are expecting up to 46 in the end. The more drivers the merrier, of course, but even if we've only got 25 right now, this is going to be fantastic as we look at Jamie Shaw here from Scotland, the northern side of the United Kingdom, making his way down the straight here, down the Bentley straight into left-hander, and as he does, goes a bit deep. They're missing his braking point entirely, but I get the feeling for a lot of our drivers as Shaw makes his way off the circuit. They're flying off the circuit and almost into the wall, but got a lovely runoff area there which he could capitalise on. I think it is the case that Shaw's just getting himself sighted in right now and needs a little bit more time before we get underway with qualifying to get himself set and underway. Now, outside of Shaw, one driver who we did have the opportunity to catch up with prior to tonight's race was Hamby, who's in the number 654 car. We're just going to look around to see if we can find Hamby out on circuit, but I don't think he's currently here. I think he's still due to make his way down, but once he does arrive in the paddock, we can give you a little bit of insights should Hamby be here in terms of what he's expecting to be able to achieve tonight. But we'll wait and find out. We can't currently see him on our timing screens or indeed in the lobby itself. But we did try and catch up with a couple of the drivers before getting underway tonight, as we see Humphreys right now making his way in towards the left-hander there. And as it pans around the camera, we'll see on another acceleration zone up into the right-hand corner there as we're just getting our bearings in once again and having a good time of it. Now, of course, the thing with Snetterton, as you can see on the track map right here, the one thing about this circuit in particular is it's very tight, and it's not exactly got a circuit which has got a lot of overall width to it. So as a result, in both qualifying and in the race as well, we'll find in qualifying, when our drivers want some clear air to do a good qualifying lap, as we know from the track map, you can see how all our drivers are sort of clustering together at the moment as they make their way through the section from turns 2 round to turn 7 before coming down onto the Bentley straight, and that's where it'll get very tight for our drivers. But then once you get onto that Bentley straight, I suspect a number of drivers will try to open up and space themselves out accordingly, and as a result of that, give themselves just a little bit more breathing room as they make their way around on the sort of qualifying lap. Meanwhile, conversely, in the race itself, it's going to be a very different story in the fact that because the circuit is so tight and narrow, although we do have some wide sections on the circuit, particularly down the Bentley straight and also the centre straight into turn 1 and long run up towards turn 2 at Montreal, it will be the case that for a good number of our drivers there'll be perfect overtaking opportunities, or they'll just choose in the tighter sections to run as close as possible to the guy in front and put some pressure on. Now, as we move away from the circuit map there, get that away from the screen for a second, we just want to give another quick shout out to our partner SimGrid, through which this wouldn't be possible in terms of us being able to work with them to share these events and publicise these events, and we're glad to have our partnership with them. But then coming back to the drivers out on circuit, we're just waiting to see. We do have Hamby, he's just arrived in the pit, and here is the number 654 driver. Now, to introduce the driver a little bit here, who I had a chance to catch up with from the United States of America, and well, Hamby was saying that prior to the race today that he wasn't a huge fan of this track initially. However, he's been putting some time in, and particularly the practice of a GT4 car, and he finds that in the GT4 class cars, particularly the Cayman, that it goes from being a rather flat and somewhat boring circuit to one that really comes to life. So he's looking forward to racing here today, and we look forward to seeing him out on circuit. And his target tonight, he doesn't really have a positional target overall, but in qualifying he's going to be looking to be in the 56s and the 57s, and with a large number of drivers out on circuit, he thinks it's going to be quite difficult to find himself a slot to fit into in qualifying. But of course he'll look for that position, and if he can get a good lap in, and as a result of that get himself well placed up the grid, and then in the race finish in the top 15, he'll be a very happy driver indeed. And the last thing as well, I asked him whether he was expecting to race against anybody he knew today, or whether it be a new crowd of faces. And what Hamby was saying to me is that it's going to be the case that he feels as though there's going to be a lot of unfamiliar faces. So as a result, he's going to just try and compete the best he can. Whether it's faces he knows or not, he's going to try and make his home team of Mixed Wheels proud. As we can see there, he's doing a little bit of tuning on the car, is Garen Hamby, and of just getting it ready to go. So it's good to catch up with Hamby prior to today's race, and we look forward to seeing what the American is able to do out on circuit with 8 minutes to go now, as he's just pulling out of the paddock, and he's going to make his way round, of course, in due time. But so as not to let him hog all the camera time, of course, we've now got Sam Butters, the British driver here from Seawolf Net Race Motorsport, just parked up in the paddock as well. The Brit in the number 47 car getting ready to get underway. And as we look further around, we can see once again we have got Exposito making his way through the left into right combination, coming down the Bentley straight into the left to right. That is known as Brundle into Nelson right now, and a lot of our drivers have been caught out so far running around the circuit here in terms of their practice sessions. I think just getting themselves nicely warmed up as they are waiting to get underway. And now he's going through that long right-hander that we know and love, known as Coram, where you've got that apex that just never seems to arrive, but when it finally does arrive it can catch you out, as Guillaume Exposito is going down towards the centre straight now to complete another lap. Now track temperature at the moment is 21 degrees centigrade. We have got an ambient temperature of 15 degrees centigrade, so it's not too hot out on circuit, so our drivers will need to put in a bit of effort in order to get those brakes and tyres warmed up. Although as the rubber gets laid down the circuit, of course, over the course of qualifying and the race, the track will evolve, and we do expect that the grip, particularly in the opening corners, say turns 1 through to 7 around this circuit, will really start to come alive, and it will be the case that our drivers will have a much better time in terms of the fact that things will really start to evolve, and as a result the grip will be there, and that's where they'll find the lap time, and also they'll be able to find the grip on circuit to make some daring overtakes. Because remember, it's going to be one thing to get close to a driver around here, it's going to be another thing in its entirety to find a way past. But under braking, if a driver's daring and they feel the grip's there, they'll be able to go for it. And with just under 6 minutes to go now, we're just going to take a look at our times as it currently stands to see who's hot and who's not. And we can see that so far it seems to be the case that the driver known as Art, or A in short, is currently setting the fastest time of a 55.887. going purple in both sectors 1 and 2, but not quite in sector 3. Scattergood there taking the purple sector time, the fastest time of anybody in sector 3 with that 37.8. But it does seem to be the case right now. We do have a number of drivers who've made their way into the 56s in this practice session, one in the 57s of course, and we are waiting to see who is going to be able to be on pole. But we're looking at times here in the low 56s. That will be the opening target for a lot of drivers on their opening qualifying laps, and then from that point onwards they'll be looking to try and fight their way into those 55s and see if they can get it lower. As Hamby was saying earlier, looking for a 56 or a 57, he'll be happy in qualifying, and I think a lot of drivers will be happy with that as well. Of course, some drivers right now are just opting to stay in the pits, not putting any reference times in, and the whole idea behind that, of course, will be for them. They just want to simply bide their time. They've probably put in their practice well before today's event. They don't want to use that final practice session available to them to get any more practice in, because they feel they're ready and they just need to tune the car and get it set up. And do keep in mind, we have the tuning session right now before qualifying, as we're counting down the time to the qualifying session, and then after that, of course, it will be the case that our drivers will have the opportunity. They'll have a 3-minute window when they are parked on the starting grid to tune their cars for the race before we do get underway, of course, with the race. That 60-minute race, which is going to be a test of our drivers' endurance abilities, but also a test of how brave they are around the circuit. All of our drivers being brave, of course. And as we look around here, we can see we've got Etienne Driller making his way down out of the right-hander there. And we can see the number 4 driver here just making his way out on the circuit and getting himself nicely warmed up there as he makes his way into the left-hander. And we believe that is just a case right now that the blue and black car just getting into the zone, the number 15 position driver in terms of these practice times right now. But these practice times do not mean anything. It can be a completely different story in the race, of course, but just making his way around on circuit right now. Coming out of Agostini, and he'll be going into the left-hander shortly of Hamilton. And as he does here, we can see just little bits of dirt and little tufts of grass being kicked up right now. Some drivers are just exploring those track limits, getting themselves set up, but no such thing here for Driller, and making their way through Oggies and up into Williams right now and having a very good lap of it. And as they continue to make their way around, of course, we are just counting down at that clock. And we can see, meanwhile, we've also got Calvin Foyer Dent, and the number 10 driver there in the red and black GT4, and a good mixture of colours in our cars today. As a result, we will be able to distinguish the vast majority of drivers from one another, and that's always great to see, of course, with the GT4 Clubmans. Now, a little bit about the car, whilst we've got some time remaining. So, this car, German manufactured, Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. It is a GT4 class car. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we're looking in the region of somewhere between 300 and 400 horsepower typically, and in the case of the Cayman, we are looking at a car with mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain. So the engine is located in what is known as the proper position, i.e. it's in the middle of the car, albeit towards the rear in the case of the Porsche here, and it's got rear-wheel drive. So that means the rear wheels will have the power applied to them, and it'll push forward. Put 2 and 2 together, and that effectively means we have got a car here that will love to rotate through the corners, and a handling circuit such as Snetterton, a tight and twisty circuit, these cars, as was said by Hamby earlier, and then other drivers who probably feel the same way as well, it really makes the circuit come to life, because you can feel the rear end under braking and going through each of the sweepers in particular, and also the hairpins. The rear end of the car will want to slide out under braking to give the driver that extra rotation, and mastering the art of having a little bit of oversteer through the corners but not too much, just letting the rear end slide out under braking or turning, will be the difference between being on pole and being in, say, P5. That's what our drivers will be going for, and I suspect their setups will make the rear of the car as loose as possible in order to be able to rotate it through the corners. But then again, because we've got a good number of shorter acceleration zones here, I expect the transmissions will be tuned as well in order to get the maximum amount of acceleration, less so of a worry about top speed. But again, top speed could be useful in the race, for example, such as the run from Murray's to Riches via the centre straight. That, of course, is the start-finish straight. And then you've got the run from Williams to Brundle via the Bentley straight, and it's on those straights there where a little bit of extra top speed combined with a good acceleration gear may make the difference between whether a driver is able to get alongside someone or not to make the move into the next corner. As we see Foydent making his way across the timeline once again, we're just giving you an update with regards to the number of drivers. We do have 26 drivers currently here as it stands, and everybody just getting ready to go with only a couple more minutes on the timing board. As we see Boardman right now, the British driver here, currently P2 in this practice session. Lovely livery, that is the dark green, the British racing green almost, in fact, with black and yellow over the top of it there, very distinguishable, and in fact reminds me of, I'm not sure what old car it was, an old race car. I think it was one manufactured by Lister, but I may be incorrect. Those colours are a little bit reminiscent there of the Lister machine. I think that was in the sort of GT3 equivalent class back when it was out in the day. Not the best of cars, I remember, but still it looks quite similar in terms of the colour scheme, but a very different looking car in terms of the actual design and aerodynamics. With our time counting down then, The only other thing to be considered at this point really is the fact that in the qualifying session, of course, our drivers are permitted to use the slipstream of one another, but I think everyone will be wary of the fact they won't want to ride too close to one another, because getting held up around here is going to cost them a huge amount of time, as we see Boardman right now making his way up through Oggy's up towards Williams at this point, and as he makes his way through the sequence of corners, of course, just getting his way onto that Bentley straight, and he's still got a little bit of time left before we hit that qualifying session. Now, looking at some other data, we're just going to take a look at our timetable once again, and we can see that Art is currently still on that 55.8. Nobody else able to make into the 55s as of this practice session right now. But again, we will wait and see, because we saw last week that in the practice session at Monza for the GT3 races, while some drivers were able to set some ferocious times in practice, it was in qualifying where the drivers really came to life, and that made the difference between who was on pole and who was not. And it was not a case that we saw the times set in practice were indicative of the times in pole. Far from it. Those practice times were absolutely smashed, and then some. But we're still waiting, and I believe we do actually still have a couple more minutes to go before we get underway with the racing. So as a result of that, it may be the case that we are going to have a slightly delayed start here, as I think we are waiting for a couple more individuals to join in right now. I am just checking my broadcasting sheet here, and I have not been informed that our practice session has been extended. In fact, everybody has been reset back to the pits for the purposes of qualifying. So it is the case, everybody's going to be jumping back into the pits very shortly, and we will get qualifying underway. Or at least that's what I believe, although by looks of things, with that timer up and some drivers still being out on circuit, in fact, we may not be getting underway with qualifying straight away. We might have a 5-minute delay to this overall session, but still, whilst we are waiting, that gives our drivers a bit more time should they need it to get themselves familiar. Now, we also have got John Doe here, currently parked up in the pits, the British driver from Ran Away from the Circus racing team there. I do love that team name. That's a fantastic team, and that's brought a smile to our face. I think it is for a number of people, and we'll have to keep very aware of the fact that John Doe may have run away from the circus, but can he run away from the pack tonight in qualifying and or the race? As we just check in with race control very briefly, so we are experiencing some tech issues at the moment with regards to on the end of race control, so there's going to be a slight delay to qualifying. It will be resolved as soon as possible, so if you just bear with us, folks. I've just had that whispered in my ear, but in the meantime we can ride on board with one of our drivers who is making their way out on the circuit right now, and we're going to ride on board with Lipka from Poland, who we haven't seen much of yet, the number 23 driver. As we jump on board with him, you ride on board with his dashboard as he's making his way around the circuit, and you can see they're just coming out of the right-hander of Williams and onto the Bentley straight. He goes a long run here. It looks so far away in terms of the left-hander Brundle, but as he makes his way up towards the corner here, you can see that corner does arrive in the end as he comes into Brundle having to balance the car. And I'm just going to go quiet very briefly so you can listen in and hear the sound of that Porsche Cayman's lovely engine. So as he makes his way out of the final corner and onto another lap, we'll continue to listen in. So making his way down the Bentley straight, you saw there in the turn 2 hairpin how the rear end came away from Lipka under braking, and that's what our drivers have got to be wary of. We're going back to the car. And a lovely lap there by Lipka as he makes his way to the timing line. So I have been informed, folks, that with regards to qualifying, it will be getting underway when the timer at the top of the screen does conclude, so in a minute's time. So all of our drivers are currently just patiently waiting to get underway, albeit some of them will not be aware of this fact. Unfortunately, we're having some issues on the technical end in terms of advancing the sessions forward to be able to skip from the open practice to qualifying. So that's as a result why we are just waiting for the timer to tick down right now. So as a result of that, we are going to be approximately 6 minutes behind schedule, but I'm sure you can bear the wait. So with our drivers now waiting, they've just all been informed of the fact we are waiting for the timer to come down before we get underway. I'd just like to introduce, unfortunately he won't be able to come onto the live stream itself, but I'd just like to introduce Kevin Smith. So if you're wondering who Kevin Smith is, he is our coordinator for tonight in terms of he's our trackside steward and also our host of the server, and it's Kevin who I'm liaising with regards to any technical difficulties. But a big thank you to Kevin for organising and running this event in terms of getting everything underway, as now we have got the wait time there being triggered as the free practice session has now concluded and everybody will be getting underway for qualifying very shortly. As we take a little look around the circuit again, and we have got Kadzela, the Polish driver as well from Simulation Esport here, making his way into the pits. In fact, a number of drivers making the hop back to the pits now. And we are just waiting to get underway with the qualifying session. Everybody itching to go. Who's going to be on pole? That is going to be the big question. Now, in terms of predictions, well, based on the times we've seen, where it's really been Art, who is the only one of two drivers to set a 55.8 from Art, and Boardman with a 55.9, we would say that they are the two favourites going into this qualifying session. But of course, anything could happen, and we will wait to see what they're able to achieve. Because anybody could really throw in a good lap at this point, and some people might have been not quote-unquote sandbagging per se, but they might have been just holding a little bit back in terms of just not giving away the true game, or perhaps they might find just a little bit more of a tune which they can use in order to improve right at the end. But whatever happens, we will wait and see in terms of who's going to be on that pole line. So again, that countdown down, only 10 more seconds to go, and in fact, there we go, everybody now set, and it's a green light for everybody as we get underway with qualifying, and we just need to quickly flick the camera, folks, and we will be back as somebody gets it very wrong going out the pits and almost takes a number of cars out, but we will be back 1 second. And alrighty folks, we are back. Then we just cleared the screen there for you, and we are getting underway for qualifying, and everybody making their way out onto the circuit. And of course, remember, the tyres will now be a little bit colder, and they'll have to get their tyres warmed up very nicely. We can see Scattergood out there along with some of the other drivers, and we've got Kadzela up towards the front of the pack. In fact, my apologies on the time screen, that's not 100% accurate. Kadzela just making his way out of the pits, in fact, with the green and black liveried Porsche, and we can see the Polish driver here, a very distinctive pair of colours. You can definitely see him from a mile away, but everybody just making their way out into the circuit now, and will be finding themselves a little bit of space out in there as well. And we can see from the track map immediately, you can note how some drivers have decided to hold themselves back in the pits just for a little bit longer. And I should tell you that we have got a window of 26 drivers we're trying to cram out into this circuit, and note how tight they all are as they're making their way through the first two sectors right now, particularly through the first sector. As they come through those corners, you can see they're all packing together going into sector 2, and as they go onto the Bentley straight, they start to open up. But clearing that away from the screen right now, we're going to hop towards the front of the pack and try to find one of our drivers who's running right up towards the front, and indeed putting everything he can in order to get around that timing line as soon as possible. And we can see right now we do have Galbacera. Now, Galbacera was around last time out at Monza in the GT3 class. The Italian driver having a decent run, but he'll be looking at to do even better today. As we can see all our drivers lining up behind one another, coming out of what is Bombhole now and up towards Coram. And as they make their way into the right-hander here, they'll be getting themselves ready to go. And we are going to jump on board here with Galbacera for his opening flying lap as he makes his way through the right-hander of Coram here, just getting those tyres warmed up. You can see just doing those little weaves here to get an extra bit of temperature in the tyres and into the brakes, a little bit of brake and weave as he now comes out the final corner, and we hop on board for his opening qualifying lap. So accelerating then up through the gears onto the start finish straight here of the centre straight and going down towards turn number 1, he'll be coming up into Riches. Braking after the 50 board there, of course, cutting nice and tight to the entry curve, and now flying out of the corner using the runoff area to his maximum possible exploitation, and now coming up into the hairpin here, the slowest corner in the circuit of Montreal. You can see just rotating the car very gradually and then getting on the power as soon as possible, as soon as you can straighten the steering wheel and feel that the rear end has settled down and bitten before going into the left-hander of Palmer, and that will complete sector 1 as he comes up to the timing line very shortly. Making his way across that timing line then, he's going to be coming along now towards the start of sector 2, which begins of course with Agostini as he goes into the second slowest corner of the circuit, another hairpin style corner but with a wider width to it, and now charging down towards the left-right combination of Hamilton, Oggies and then Williams, which takes him to the end of sector 2 as he'll make his way onto the Bentley straight here, getting the first left-hander very nicely collected along with the right-hander here of Oggies, just riding a little bit wide of the apex curve there, but nothing too bad as we see some dirt kicked up from the driver in front. And now through the Williams corner he goes here, just going a little bit wide upon entry. That's not going to cost him too much speed, perhaps a tenth upon the entry, but now it's a long charge down the Bentley straight here, heading down towards the left-hander known as Brundle, which kicks off sector 3, and he'll be waiting to sight that braking zone. He looks for it, braking at that 50 board, a little bit hesitant on the steering there. You could see how initially he turned in a little too early and had to release the steering and then re-enter the steering input, noticing that he just turned in a bit too early and he would have cut too close to the apex curve if he had gone on that steering path. But no such issues there as he makes his way out of Nelson and Bombhole, and now coming up towards the very difficult Coram corner here. Look how wide and long he has to go around the right-hander here. He has to get himself settled and into the final corner of Murray's, and coming out of the corner he goes, and it's going to be down towards the timing line here. And what's the opening lap going to be from Galbacera? It is going to be for him as he comes across that timing line a 1:57.0, which puts him at provisional P3 or provisional P4 right now, as we've got more drivers coming through, including Crawshaw, who we haven't seen too much of as he makes his way around the circuit. Through turn 1, Crawshaw goes here, the British driver in the number 88 car, Cameron from GT Marquez Racing, and making his way into the right hand. And now the hairpin of Montreal, just getting it nailed up very nicely there, but he has got traffic in front of him now, the number 444 driver of Pochopian, as he makes his way around the corner, and Pochopian by comparison meanwhile just ahead, and the Polish driver coming up through the left-hander here of what is Palmer to complete sector 1, but you can see already how Crawshaw's backed off it completely, recognising the fact that Pochopian was too slow, and as a result he would get caught up and trip up behind him. So as a result he's let the full boost racing driver go, and the number 444 driver can now press on with his lap. Currently provisional P8 with a 57.7 and looking to improve as soon as possible. Now our drivers of course continue to make their way round as we take a look further around here, and so far provisional P1 is going to Art with a 56.4. Of course Art being the one to lead the practice session, as you see somebody go wide there going out to the left-hander, as we note that Art making his way around the circuit right now and going through the left-hand corner there of what is Hamilton before coming up towards Oggies and Williams, and as he makes it through the way through the double right hand combination here, very shortly be coming on towards the Bentley straight, and we can see ahead of him right now got a little bit of traffic, but this will also give him a tow as he makes his way down the long straight and coming up towards the braking zone for Brundle. Now of course for him the big question will be, does he benefit more by being in the tow, or does he stay out of it knowing that he's going to gain too much speed and as a result get caught up in the dirty air and trip over the driver in front of him? Well, neither. He decides to go for a middle ground to the two, as we see some dirt being kicked up there through the right-hander of Bombhole, and this is looking to be a very strong lap from Art so far as he's making his way through the right-handers here, starting off with Bombhole and then into Coram he goes, and we look behind and we can see that he's got a couple of cars getting closer as the driver in front of him goes wide off the circuit there, and I think that was Scattergood who went wide and got it very, very wrong indeed. In fact, that wasn't Scattergood, that was one of our other drivers. I think that might have been the number 8 of Heisner there as he makes his way down towards the start finish straight. Will it be an improvement from Art, who's dropped to P3 recently, as as he comes across that timing line. I don't think it's going to be a major improvement. It's not. So that's a 57.4, so he has not improved so far, and currently provisional pole is in the hands of Andy Boardman, the British driver from Greasweasel Racing, on a 56.1, and that was his 56.1, and that was his previous lap as well, and the rather definitive liveried number 69 car there doing a very good job. Now looking at further around, we have got Nicola Chioffi, who's the Swiss driver, just making his way out of the pits right now. He's previously set a 158.6 in this qualifying session, putting in provisional P23 right now, but will be looking to get himself a little bit further up the order. And indeed, a number of drivers here finding traffic out on circuit and getting themselves back into the pits to try and clear the traffic, or just adjust the car setup a little bit, given the fact that they're finding perhaps the setup isn't perfect for qualifying, and when they need to get back into the pits in order to just get themselves some clear air, they can make some changes. But Chioffi right now will be looking to improve as soon as possible, as he's got some cars behind him and some cars in front of him, and he's got to find himself some clear air. As we look even further around, and our last place man right now, albeit he hasn't actually set a proper time as of yet, is Hamby, who is currently in P26, the American, with a 202.0, but we believe that's not indicative of what he can potentially achieve, and we'll be looking to go a little bit faster later on in this qualifying session. 7 minutes to go, of course. We've got less than half the qualifying session remaining, and still plenty of time for our drivers to find a way in order to build up a little bit more pace and be able to get themselves further up the order. As we see Hamby right now making his way through Brundle and Nelson before he's got 2 more corners to go after this. Well, 3 if you also count Bombhole, which is pretty much flat out for these guys with a little bit of lift. As he makes his way through the right-hander, he's now got Coram and then Murray's to go, and it's going to be the case here. He needs to sight this very well. Is he able to improve and get himself off the bottom step of the grid right now? It looks a very good lap so far, and it's looking quite good. This is looking potentially about a 58 according to our timing screens. And making his way out of the final corner then and across that line. What's it going to be from the American driver? It is going to be a 158.5, which moves him up to provisional P18. So a bit of a promotion there, but plenty of drivers, and Hamby himself will know that he can potentially improve, given the fact he was targeting a 56 in his practice, and indeed targeting that for qualifying. We were right now the German driver here from Eiffel Power Racing in the number 62 car. He is up in P12 as it currently stands, and I should point out that we have started to see our first 55s of this qualifying session. And just to give you a quick update on who is our provisional pole sitter, it is Rampazzo, the Italian driver, who jumps into the pits bravely to make some tweaks to the car. He's on a 55.8 so far, as set on his previous lap, and Scattergood not far behind him right now is the British driver making his way around the circuit. Scattergood here making his way up into the left-hander of Brundle, and then Nelson soon follows. As we can see, he's on a 55.9 and will be looking to improve as he goes very deep there into Nelson, and as a result of that, he's going to severely compromise his lap, and he's most likely going to get a finger wagging as well for track limits as he makes his way into the right-hander of what is Coram after coming out of bomb hole, and flashing lights there to tell the driver in front to let him through, and we can see the driver pulling out away immediately in the red and black car as he makes his way to the end of this lap. But I'm sure the number 9 driver will be going for another, as we have got some yellow flags being briefly waved. I think that's where drivers are trying to give one another space rather than anybody having a major incident. But as we can see, Scattergood here going on to another lap right now. That was not an improvement, of course, what the fact he made that small mistake. Although John Doe, I should say that, behind him has just improved, and then has Boardman. So Boardman now takes provisional pole with a 55.737. Boardman really coming to life right now is the British driver here. As you can see, he's really starting to raise the bar in terms of those qualifying times. But really right now we have 4 drivers in the 55, so that's P1 through to P4, and it is getting incredibly close. We've got Art in P5 on a 56.0 at the moment, and he'll be looking to try and improve as soon as possible as he makes his way down the Bentley straight here. And we can see a driver getting out of the way as blue flags are being waved, and Art will be using a little bit of extra tow there from the driver he's lapped, as well, not lapped I should say, who he's had to go past. We see somebody going flying off there coming out of a Nelson corner. That's disastrous, and the driver behind following them. That seems to be a synchronised runoff, as we note that Art just making his way through and not being perturbed by the incidents around him, as the Allied Racing driver now goes into Coram here and will try to nail this as best as he possibly can right now. No changes to our top 5 in terms of the qualifying times, whilst Art's been making his way around on the rest of this lap. Out of the left-hander he goes, then clips the apex curve a little bit higher there of Murray's, and that may have unsettled the car or cost him a bit of time in getting on the throttle. But now charging down towards the timing line here. Is this going to be an improvement from the driver? It is not an improvement, and he's got to go again. So right now Art will be looking to improve, and I think that last lap was a bit of a sighter initially, given it was a 2:42, so probably getting himself out the pits and getting himself into some clear air, as we see that Art is really pushing the limits there, going a little bit off at Riches, but just about keeping the car together as he makes his way through Montreal. Very collected through Montreal, and it looks as though he's really got that rear end set up how he wants it right now, as we see that Sam Butters, meanwhile, the P9 driver in the British Mobile there, we can see that Seawolf Net Race Motorsports driver doing a good job of picking up the pace. A 56.8, his best so far, and that was his previous lap, and trying to stay into that top 10 and looking to improve as much as he possibly can with 3 minutes to go. Of course, not much time left in this qualifying session as we look a little bit further down the order once again, and we can see right now that Miles Owens, who is currently in P21, going on to a lap, and let's listen in. Now, he has got a little bit of traffic that's got immediately out the way. So as a result, the Lookout Racing driver here, the 986 car, doing a very good job so far in qualifying in just keeping it together, and perhaps find himself a little bit further down the order, but you never know, that's maybe his pace, and in the race he'll be looking to improve, as we see a number of drivers moving out the way for Owens as he's making his way around on a fast lap. And we should point out that the track temperature has dropped by 1 degree centigrade. It's gone down to 20 degrees compared to the 21 in the practice session, but the rubber is being laid down right now, and as a result of that, I think our drivers will feel the grip of the car as they're going around. It will be coming to life right now with the minimum time left in qualifying. The more rubber the better, of course, as we just follow Owens as he makes his way through the rest of sector 2. And you can see they're just not feeling too confident in getting on the power coming out of Williams was Owens. In fact, the car started to drift a little bit wide of the corner, started to understeer wide, and I think that might be the thing that's perhaps holding Owens a little bit back. We've seen other drivers go through Williams and having a much stronger turn-in, and now coming into a Brundle and Nelson. And a nice line there from Owens. You could see how he managed to get the car stopped very nicely, kept it nice and stable, and he'll have one more lap to go after this as he's now going through Bomb Hole and up towards Coram. Now one corner separating him from that timeline as he rides high there on the curb of Murray's Corner and almost getting launched off the circuit. In fact, they're having to collect the car together, and I think Owens will be able to learn from a couple of the small things here as he goes across that timeline. Is it improvement for the driver? It is an improvement. No, it's not an improvement. In fact, he does not beat his personal best, but he's matching pretty much his personal best. To give you an idea, he's currently on a 58.983, and that lap was a 58.896. But I think the track limits there may have just simply, particularly going through the final corner, that may have just simply cost him the lap, as we have only got 30 seconds to go. And at the moment, it's Boardman who is currently leading with a 55.671. It is 1.5 tenths clear of second place man John Doe, and he has pulled himself back to the pits as Boardman. I think he feels he has done it all, as we see Rampazzo right now in P3. Can he do anything to upset the top two? He'll be starting on that front row, the Italian driver, with only 10 seconds to go, and then all of our drivers will be required to finish their current lap. Rampazzo right now making his way down the Bentley Straight, of course, and a lot of our drivers coming to the end of their qualifying. I can also tell you that Hamby right now is in P19 and will not be qualifying any further. He's on a 58.461, so missing out on his target a little bit in qualifying, but everybody just bringing their laps to a close right now, and we'll see if there's any changes as Butters has dropped down to a P10 with a 56.889, with Acton going up to P9 with 56.841. But focusing on Rampazzo, a driver ahead of him, getting it very wrong there through Bomb Hole and taking to the rallycross section of the circuit, i.e. going on the grass for across Coram, and as a result of that, Rampazzo will be grateful for the fact the traffic has been cleared and it hasn't come back to haunt him as he now makes his way out of Murray's Corner here, and it's the long run down towards the timing line. Will Rampazzo be able to get himself up onto that front row, or will it be the case that he pulls into the pits, does Rampazzo? So no improvement there, as does Scattergood. So as a result, ladies and gentlemen, pole position goes to Andy Boardman from the United Kingdom, and alongside him will be John Doe. These two being separated in the end by only 1.5 tenths. The pole lap being a 55.671. Behind them will be Rampazzo and Scattergood. Rampazzo will be starting at the head of that pack. And then we have got Art, who looking very strong in qualifying, was not able to hook up a 55, as in practice I should say, was not able to hook up a 55 in the qualifying session. Only able to achieve a 56.0, but we will keep our eyes on Art, of course, the 5th place qualifying driver in the number 21 car, in the fact he was looking very strong in the practice session. And perhaps that was more indicative of what he could do in the race. Crawshaw will be lined up alongside him, the British driver from the GT Marquez team, the number 88 car. There, 56.5. But our top 5 definitely in a little bit of a class of their own. The top 5 being separated by half a second as we see the session has concluded, and there are your qualifying standings. Now we are going to be getting over to our track very shortly, and we're just going to quickly clear the screen for you. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. So currently all of our drivers getting themselves set up and getting their tunes in preparation for the race. And as we are waiting to get underway, of course, with 2.5 minutes to go before we get the rolling start underway, our drivers will be getting themselves mentally set and be thinking about that run down towards turn 1. As we do see right now, we've got a number of drivers getting themselves out on to the grid. We have got Jamie Shaw there in P22 right now. And remember, just because our drivers are starting right towards the back, and we've got Mike Heisner starting on the back row in P26, just because they are starting right at the back does not mean for any moment that it's going to be the case that they cannot move their way up the order. And we did see, and we have seen previously, a number of different circuits in the next-gen racing community that sometimes drivers who start right at the back get to avoid all the carnage, and as a result of that make their way up the order by just inheriting positions. But we will wait and see what they're able to achieve. I think most eyes will be on our front drivers here, and looking particularly at whether Boardman, Doe, Rampazzo and Scattergood can make a break, and whether Art is able to stay with them. So we've got Ramsden here parked up in P20. And we've got 26 drivers on the grid. And we can expect some fast and furious racing. They're going to get underway in just over a minute. Now, do keep in mind, of course, that the drivers who are starting in the odd number places will be on the inside down into turn 1. So that will give them a positional advantage, but of course they'll lose the ability to take the racer 9 into Riches. But we do have 2 long runs. We have the long run down towards Riches from the centre straight, albeit the rolling start procedure will cut a chunk of that. And then we've got the run down to Montreal and the reverse back to Palma. So as a result, just because you start towards the front and you might get the best run into turn 1, does not mean you'll find yourself in the lead come turn 2 and going to the end of sector 1. And whoever starts up front, so Boardman for example, will need to get a very good pull out of the rolling start procedure, and then as a result look to either have to go defensive into 1 and 2, or alternatively try and make the break. So big questions to be asked by some of our drivers right now, and they'll need to answer them in due course, as we've only got 10 seconds to go before we get underway with the rolling start. So our drivers now pulling away, of course, getting the rolling start procedure underway. We can see Boardman taking a very gradual pull off the line. In fact, the majority of our drivers are at the front, taking it nice and easy off the line here, just getting themselves a little bit up to speed, as we see Boardman, in fact, parking the car up there. I'm not sure what's happened to Boardman, but he's parked the car up briefly. Perhaps some technical issues, or perhaps the car just getting stuck in gear, but he will need to catch back up to the lead pack. He's going to scythe his way through as quickly as possible, as everybody just gradually building up a bit of speed right now, but Boardman will have to cut his way back up to the order, because he should be our man starting up front. As we can see, Boardman re-inherited his position there. Everybody getting out of the way for the qualifying pole sitter, as we note Rampazzo right up the backside of Doe there. I think some of the drivers in the upper end of the midfield, such as for example Lipka, Driller and Exposito, will happily just take their time around the circuit, whereas our front runners of course will want to get the rolling start completed as soon as possible here. But they will need to of course get their tyres warmed up and also get those brakes warmed up. The track temperature has gone up a degree since qualifying. It's going gone up to 21 degrees centigrade, returning to where it was in terms of practice. And do keep in mind, of course, with the amount of rubber being laid down right now, the grip levels are going to be in their optimum, and as a result of that, we are expecting the drivers to have the full grip available to them. And on top of that as well, given the fact we've got an overcast sky right now, we're not expecting the rain to come in at any point, or for the skies to open up and give us some sunshine. So as a result, it's going to be quite a mild race, and it'll be the case for our drivers here that they won't have to worry about too much sun glare, or alternatively a spot of rain making the car very slippery, or the track very slippery indeed. We look a little bit further back right now, and we can see Weber parked in at P17 in terms of where he qualified and making his way around the circuit right now. All of our drivers just getting themselves around, and as they make their way around the circuit, we can see Weber just getting a little bit of speed in there as the driver alongside him pulling it up along, and that's Courtney behind him. And we haven't seen too much of Connell Courtney, the P18 driver here from CC Racing, getting it ready to go as they make their way out the double right-hander combination of Oggies and Williams onto the Bentley straight. And now the drivers will start to bunch up a bit there as they make their way down onto that straight, and we can see it right at the front of the pack of the train right now. Everybody just weaving side to side, trying to get as much temperature into those tyres, particularly Boardman. He will want the best possible run down into turns 1 and 2, and he'll want to have those tyres and those brakes as hot as possible to get himself nicely aligned going into that heavy braking zone for turn 2, where I can expect that we're going to see a number of drivers make some mistakes. As we also say hello to K2Xon in the chat, and as a result of that, and of course this is being hosted using Assetto Corsa Competizione on PC, for those of you wondering what sim we are using here. But now all of our drivers are getting ready to go with that rolling start. Boardman will lead the pack around through Coram and into Murray's, and everybody will be lining up very gradually now. Everybody will be getting set, and as everybody bunches up here, it's going to be the big question. Can Boardman take this one away from the front and hold on to lead, or will Doe, Rampazzo or Scattergood have something to say about it? Or what about Jorda? We haven't talked too much about Jorda. Alejandro Jorda, the Porsche Motorsport driver here, can he find a way into the mix as well? That will be the question. But now as they make their way out to Murray's, we wait for the rolling start to kick off. And it's lights out, and away we go for our drivers as they all immediately charge down towards turn number 1. As they make their way down here, you can see that Boardman getting a very strong start, and Doe not able to find a way into the mix here as they make their way through turn 1. Taking a defensive middle line there did Boardman, as we can see behind him Joe right now chasing after him. Sorry, Doe chasing as hard as possible. As we look back and we see one driver immediately going flying off there at turn number 1. I think there might have been a major bit of contact. We will take a look back, of course, but Doe getting a little bit bogged down by comparison to Boardman, and Boardman having a fantastic start as we look further down the order here, and we can see that there has been some major contact further down the order, and I think it's the case. Is that Ramsden who's just had the spin out? Alternatively, is that Hamby? I think that is Hamby, in fact, who got spun around there, and I'm not sure what's happened. We will take a look back shortly for you, but Hamby having a difficult opening start to the race as we see everybody making their way around onto a sector 2 right now, and everybody starting to form into a line here. Things kicking off very early on in the race, and now everybody just getting themselves settled down into a little bit of a racing order here, as we do see Owens going out the inside there of Heisner through the left-hander before coming down into the braking zone here for what is Hamilton. And well, everybody going a bit wide there, people driving, not recognising the fact that tyres may not be fully up to temperature there, and as a result a little bit of rawness in the car as they make their way for the double right hand combination to go onto the Bentley straight. But meanwhile up front, Boardman leading the field away, albeit you can see behind that Doe and Rampazzo coming to blows a little bit here. Doe still holding on to P2 for the time being, but Rampazzo putting that pressure on early and are up into P4, and in fact we have lost Scattergood, and as I say, that Doe gets knocked a little bit wide there. I think there's a bit of a mistake coming out of the round as there's been major contact further behind. A lot of cars there getting it all sorts of wrong, and we have got yellow flags, and that is an absolute traffic jam of cars. What on earth has happened there? We weren't able to catch the collision as it occurred, ladies and gentlemen, so that's a bit unfortunate, but it does look as though it seems to be a chain of cars, and Feuerdent happened to be right in the mix. That did Calvin Feuerdent as he made his way through the corner. But what I can tell you is that Nelson has claimed a lot of lives today, and it's going to be the case that a lot of drivers will find themselves completely out of position, and Doe dropping all the way down to P7 come the end of lap number 1, and now having to fight his way through it as he goes side by side here with Scattergood through turn 1 and up into turn 2, up into Montreal they go. The braking for for the hairpin, of course, and we can see that Doe right now really having to work it hard, as it is the case. He's got to recover a lot of lost ground as they make their way down towards turn number 3 and the end of sector 1. But the order as it stands, Boardman leading right now by the region of 1.8 seconds over Art, who's moved up to P2 of everything that's kicked off. Rampazzo in P3 right now, chasing after Art, of course, the Italian driver from Wheelspin Esport, as behind them we've got Patrick Lipka, the Polish driver, who, to point out to you, ladies and gentlemen, and this is how fortunes can turn, Lipka qualified just down in the bottom half of the top 10, and he's now finding himself just outside of the podium positions right now. He's 1.5 seconds off of Rampazzo, but the good news for Lipka, of course, is he's got a nice bit of track right now. He's got a car to follow up front, and he's got Exposito and Scattergood behind him. Exposito qualified around Lipka, and as a result of that, Scattergood, who was the faster driver, needs to first find a way past Guillermo Exposito, the Spanish driver, before making his way up towards Lipka. So Exposito can act as a little bit of a back marker stroke rear gunner for Lipka, so long as Lipka keeps his head on right now and keeps it screwed on nice and tightly. But you can see how Scattergood is already trying to sight up a way past, as is Exposito versus Lipka, as they make their way into left into right combination come the end of the Bentley straight. Through Nelson they go once again. It's been carnage on lap number 1 at Nelson, but not this time on lap number 2, as they all make their way through Bombhole now and up into Coram once again. And we can see that Exposito getting closer and closer as we jump on board with the Spanish driver here, making his way through Coram and then up into Murray's Corner for the second time of asking. And you can see just putting a bit of pressure on the Polishman is the Spaniard as they make their way out the final corner. And I think what it is for Exposito, he's not looking for a way through in terms of making a pass immediately, but he's just gauging where Lipka might be a little bit weak, and as a result where he can capitalise, or where he can just put on a little bit more leverage, a little bit more pressure, and get Lipka to go into a mistake. Because around here, of course, neither driver will want to lose positions to Scattergood behind, or Doe, who's really coming up fast behind, I should point out to you. To give you an idea where Doe is right now, Doe is in P7 as the camera... Oh, goodness me, what has happened to Doe? We jump on board here with Doe. So this was Doe making his way up into turn 1, and you're going to see as he's coming to the end of lap number 2 then, where it was the case going up into the corner, what on earth has happened? Well, he's on the inside here, and as we look to the external camera, in fact, we can see that he's side by side at this point with, I think that was Butters there, and as they went into the corner, Doe versus Butters, Butters clipping the rear. As he's turned in, it's Butters, he just went up onto the apex curb, and that sent both cars flying. Goodness me, I hope both drivers are okay, but particularly Doe, who's retreated to the pits, and I think that is Doe's race over. I think the car is out of action, and he will no longer be running away from the circus, will the British driver there, as it is the case that car is out of race. That is our first retirement of this race so far, as all our drivers continue to make their way around on circuits. Our first retirement from Doe, the man who qualified in second and was looking to be the closest challenger to our race leader Boardman. But as we look back around the circuit right now, we can see that things have opened up quite a bit between the pack, although looking down in P16 right now, I should point out to you that Bernberger is being chased quite heavily in terms of cars behind him right now, as we see the German driver, the number 1 door car there, just making his way down the Bentley straight. He has got all over the back of him a Kadzila, but he's also in a freeway battle here with Butters as well, and as Butters is on his inside there, I don't think that's actually Butters in front, I think that's another driver entirely because of the numbering system, but we can see that Bern going around the outside there and getting a very nice move on for P15, but he goes too deep into the right-hander there, and as a result of that, Nelson claims another victim temporarily, and he drops down the order a little bit as they make their way through Bombhole and up towards Coram, and as they go into the extended right-hander here, Bernberger losing so many places, dropping down to what I think is P19 as a result of that, or P18 at the least, as we see that Butters, well, he's making his way around the circuit right now behind all this, but we look around and we can see that Ramsden, who was ahead of that battle earlier, just breaking away from everybody, and we look back to Jamie Shaw right now, who finds himself in the middle of this pack, does the Scottish driver here. Remember, he qualified down towards the back, but a good work from Shaw to make his way up to P18 so far, as they all make their way down towards turn 1 on lap number 4. And as you can see them going through the corner, the Scotsman just a little bit cautious there not to get too close to the back of Kadzila as they go up into the braking zone for turn number 2. Montreal once again, but you can see how Galbacera, having qualified quite a way down the order initially and then being caught up in that massive incident at Nelson, it is the case that Galbacera's now got a lot of work to do, as we see the drivers are making their way around turn number 3 right now as they go through the left-hander here and they start to head up toward Agostini. It's going to be the case they complete sector number 1 and they continue to race into the tighter section of the circuit, where overtaking's going to be difficult, but it's Galbacera on the inside there ashore as they go through Agnesty, and it is the case that Galbacera gets the move done. Brave on the brakes there was Galbacera as they come out of the corner then, and now the Italian moving up to P18 and chasing after the places. He's got Shaw ahead of him. The number 22 car will be hunting down the not Shaw, my apologies, Kadzila ahead of him, and he'll be hunting down Kadzila as rapidly as humanly possible. But looking a little bit further back right now, what I can tell you is that our last place man of Mo right now, having been caught up in pretty much everything, having a very difficult time of it, quite a way out of the action as it currently stands. He's got the window of 1.5 seconds to Heisner ahead of him, albeit Heisner is in fact some way up the circuit. That's more than 1.5 seconds, I should point out to you. That these two right down the order, and Hamby just a little bit ahead of Heisner. The American drivers not having a good day at the office so far, but don't count them out. They may find their way back into the racing. As we look back up to our race leader right now, going on to lap number 5, and we can see that Art is starting to close down the British driver of Boardman as they make their way onto the 5th lap. 52 minutes still remaining, of course, in this 1 hour race. The track temperature still holding at 21 degrees centigrade, and a lot of our drivers now starting to get a feeling for what it's like to run around here, as we see Boardman goes a little bit wide there out of turn 1, and as a result of that may pick up a track limits warning as a result of it, although I think it was right in the limits there, as Art is now starting to get all over the back of the British driver here, and I think it's going to be the case that Art will be looking for a move in the near future. And Rampazzo now back up into P3, a secure P3 in the black and purple livery Porsche there, or the black and pink purple livery we should really say. Number 542 car doing his utmost here just to try and follow the leaders and try to watch out for when they start to fight and whether they're going to cost one another time, and maybe he'll be able to get into the situation and perhaps pick up another place, or perhaps pick up the place off of both of them, as we've seen time and time again in sim racing and indeed in real world racing. Sometimes you just got to be in the right place at the right time, see the guys in front of you fight, and you can pick up a 2-for-1 special. But right now Art getting ever closer to the back of our race leader as we jump on board with our P2 man right now, and you can see going through the right hander of Williams up towards the Bentley straight here. It's going to be a case he needs to get a good exit, doesn't get the best of exits this time, and as a result Boardman will be safe for the time being. But you can tell that Art really wants this back. He qualified P5 in qualifying, missed out on setting a 55, hit a 56.0, but now he's got a point to prove as he's chasing down the fastest man on circuit, or at least for qualifying. But you can see how Boardman really feeling that pressure under braking into the left to right combo of Brundle into Nelson there. As we go through Bomb Hole Corner once again, we can see with Coram coming up and then Murray's shortly after, it's the case that Art seems to be the man on track right now who's going the fastest of anyone, and indeed I can confirm that on our timing screens right now. The previous lap was a 56.8 from Art, the fastest lap of anybody, and Boardman by comparison having a very difficult time right now, a 57.8 on the previous lap, and the best lap has also been set by Art, a 56.721 earlier on in this race, as they make their way onto the next lap. And again, Boardman and also Art trading lap times that time, both in the 56s. Boardman a 56.8, Art a 56.9, but the two of them really trading lap times, and I expect will be trading pain very shortly. Now, meanwhile, looking a little bit further back in P12, we can see Pochopian making his way down towards turn number 1. Haven't seen too much of the Polish driver here, but he's been keeping his head out of trouble, and you can see that the number 444 car just making its way through turn number 1 up towards Montreal he goes, as we do see a driver go flying off there, and I think that is Acton having a disaster. What happened to Acton? So we're going to see here as Acton makes his way into turn 1, I get the feeling this is going to be either a case of clipping the apex curb of turn 1 too high, or alternatively just a case of running a little bit too fast into the corner, into Rich's corner. As he makes his way into the right hander he goes, and we can see going through the corner here, just a bit of snap oversteer through the corner. In fact, the car just seemed to catch away from him, and that, I've not seen that in a while from a Porsche Cayman, but it's the case for Acton. The car just decided it didn't want to do the corner, and it all went wrong. He's dropped himself down to P13. He was up in P9 at the time, I should say, but we'll wait and see what the British driver is able to do. He's still got plenty of the race to go, of course, as we see ahead of him Courtney and also Pochopian coming to blows there, coming through the right hander of what was Oggy's, and it was the case there wasn't the space to go there, as we see the two drivers making their way through, and Pochopian really feeling a lot of pressure as he's going down onto the Bentley straight right now and going wide out of Williams, and that will be a track limits warning for Pochopian, I'm sure, as we can see that Courtney all over the back of him, but Pochopian goes defensive into the left into right combo. As a result, we can see that Courtney's going to take the racing line here, and Pochopian will need to get on those brakes really early, and as they go through the right hander, it is the case that both drivers make it, but Courtney looking very strong in that P12 position right now is the number 16 driver as they make their way through Bomb Hole and up into Coram, and I think a move is going to be on very shortly, so we're going to stay with this a little bit longer and just see whether there's a trade for position come the end of the run from Riches to Montreal. As they make their way then into Murray's, the left-hander about to come up here, and you can see how Pochopian really struggling to come out of the Coram corner up into Murray's, and that is where Courtney is so strong. He seems to have the better speeds through the sweepers, those apex speeds really working out for Courtney, and this is what's giving him the opportunity to catch up to Pochopian. He can just get the better drive out the corner as they make their way into Riches, and you'll see this again here as they make their way through the apex. Watch how Courtney will start to close up immensely, and there it is. He's just got so much more confidence, and he immediately comes out the dirty air there. He had to, and look, he's on the inside, brave on the brakes there from Courtney, and he's up into P11 by looks of things, but he's still side by side, although Pochopian then flashing his lights, and I'm not sure why Pochopian's flashing his lights there. Perhaps he feels as though there was a bit of contact, but it didn't look like it on screen. But Courtney up into P11 with a nice move into Montreal. And we look a little bit further up right now, and I can tell you that Webber, the German driver, up in P9, under a bit of pressure from Chioffi right now, the Swiss behind him. We're looking at the picture in the distance here with Webber as he makes his way through Agonisti, and makes his way through the left-hander now of Hamilton towards Oggies here. And we switch to the helicam at this point in time as we see our drivers continue to make their way around on circuit. And note here as they make their way through the double right-hand combination of Oggies through to Williams here, how it is the case that Webber right now settling into a good rhythm here, and you can see how Chioffi is faster in some sections of the circuit, particularly in Sector 1, but in Sector 2, that's where Webber, the German, really starts to come to life. And as they go into Sector 3, I think it's again a case of trading time as Chioffi starts to catch up a little bit here, but you can see the Swiss is gaining, he's gaining, but then as they go up into the combination of Brundle and Nelson, it's the case that neither of them really able to gain too much on one another, and it will be a constant battle between these two, I think, for the next few laps, as we note behind that Courtney now being very heavily pressured by, I think that was Acton going for the move there on Pochopian as they make their way through the corner. And let's take a look at this. In fact, that's Pochopian who's behind them, and in fact, I think our timing screen there is a little bit glitched. No, he was there, so he'd already got the move done, and behind them, that's Butters trying to find the move on Pochopian, so there was a move on there, but it wasn't the one that we were thinking of, and it was the case that Matt Acton tried to find his way out the inside of Courtney, who went a little bit deep into the left-hander, but it was the case that was contact between Butters and Pochopian. Pochopian was knocked forward through Nelson, and that's how it all settled out. So no overtake was made, but there was contact between the drivers there, and it was very close to tears as they make their way onto another lap. And Butters right now in P14 trying to chase after the top 10. The top 10's only 3 cars ahead of him right now in terms of those positions, and he'll be looking to do it. I get himself into that position to attack as we see that the battle between Webber and Chioffi is just up the road from these guys, approximately 2 to 3 seconds. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that the gap between Boardman and Art has stabilised at approximately 0.5 seconds at this point in time. It does fluctuate every so often, but for the purposes of our timing screens, it's very close between the two of them. And the big question, of course, will be from these guys in the pits, which one of them gets the jump on the other, as one of them fueled a little bit less than the other, of course, as they make their way then through the combination of Oggies into Williams once again and out onto the Bentley straight. And we're just checking in with race control to see if there's been any information that's coming. No information from race control with regards to any retirements or such full, so everything is continuing to go well as our drivers are making their way around on the circuit. And we see that Boardman is continuing to lead right now, but how long can the British driver hold on? That will be the real question, as Art is looking very dangerous behind him. But of course, it's one thing to catch up here, it's another story altogether to overtake, as we talked about in the pre-show. Now looking a bit further back, Exposito, well, he's up in P4. Now we did see a bit of Exposito earlier on, the Spanish driver, just doing a very good job. He's got Scattergood behind him, and Scattergood was always bound to try and find his way back up through the field because he digged out, qualify these guys. But it was the case that Scattergood had a disastrous opening couple of laps, whereas Exposito just managed to hold on in there. As he rides a little higher over Murray's there, same with Scattergood as well. But both drivers right now trading laps. I can tell you that as of this lap that's just been completed, as they come across the timing line, that Exposito was able to set a 57.8, meanwhile Scattergood a 58.5. So both drivers constantly matching one another for time, and both of their fastest laps, and they're identical. Exposito with a 56.7 and Scattergood with a 56.6. So neither driver really able to get an advantage on one another, and I think they're going to be using one another as pacing partners for the time being, as Scattergood gets a better tighter line. And in fact, Exposito, I say that, and the commentator's curse immediately strikes as Exposito has a disastrous run at Montreal there, goes very wide, and I'm sure the stewards will be whispering in his ear right now, you do that again and that's going to be a penalty at some point. Crawshaw, meanwhile, in P6 right now, the rather wonderful liveried white, pink, yellow and black liveried Porsche there, making his way up into Agnosti, and as he comes through the corner here, doing a very good job right now of holding on to that P6 position, and not really putting a foot wrong is Crawshaw right now, just doing a good job of staying outside of the top 5 slightly, the GT Marquez driver, and we look forward to seeing whether he's able to get a little bit further up the order as we go deeper and deeper into the race. But our top 5 really have stabilised, as has our top 6 driver, and in fact our top 8 are very far away from the rest of the field, as we look back to Jorda right now, Alejandro Jorda, the number 6 driver here, who gained a lot of places with all of the carnage on the opening couple of laps. And that is our top 8. They are all spread out quite considerably, albeit our top 2, of course, are very tight together. And Exposito chased by Scattergood, of course, those two are tight together as well. But otherwise, we have then got a long distance back of 5 seconds from P8 to P9, as both of the drivers here, Exposito and Scattergood, make their way through, Nelson once again. Now you're probably wondering at this point, okay, well what's happening in that battle for P9? Well, Siofi has got past Webber, it should be pointed out, and Webber in fact got past him, and we will double check back to see if we can see where that happened on circuit. And I don't think it has happened. It must have happened quite recently. In fact, I believe it's the case that the two of them were battling and we didn't catch it on camera, but the overtake was made at Montreal on the previous lap. That's what I'm hearing in my ear right now. So as a result, Siofi is up into P9, albeit that's happened off camera, but he does seem to have the pace by comparison with Webber right now, as Webber has dropped down to P10 and is falling away from Siofi quite a bit. Behind them, however, Courtney is now starting to break away from the battle for P11. He's taking P11 and claiming it to himself and hunting down the top 10, as we see that Butters has scythed his way back up through this pack of cars right now, and he's back up into P12 Pechopian, and also Acton behind right now, looking to continue their fight in action. The number 444 driver, who you're looking at immediately, as we see Acton going a bit wide once again through turn number 1, being caught out. A lot of drivers being caught out at turn number 1 here today at Rich's corner, being the case that they just can't seem to stop the car from understeering wide of the corner, trying to carry too much momentum or not getting the right turn in with the car, and as a result they are finding they're just pushing the limits a little bit too far as they make their way through turn number 3, going through Palmer corner here and to the end of sector 1. Now looking a little bit further back, meanwhile, we can see that we've got Ramsden making his way through turn number 3 as it currently stands. It's been a little bit quiet for Ramsden after the opening couple of laps. The British driver in P15 right now just settling into his rhythm as 20 minutes of this race are almost concluded, almost a third of the way there. We are of course waiting for that 10-minute pit window to open. I suspect it may potentially open around the 35-minute mark. That's where it will most likely open, or at least that's what I'd be thinking as a driver. It'll probably open at the midway point of the race, but you never know what could happen, of course. But looking around our timing screens right now, we can see that Verdent, meanwhile, making his way around the circuit and not having the best of days is the P19 driver as it currently stands, as there's some dirt in front. Oh goodness me, something has gone very wrong for a driver ahead of right now. I can't tell you who that was, but somebody has gone very wide off the circuit, and I think that was Cadzelia as they made their way around there. And we're going to take a look back here as they were making their way. This is Agostini corner, I should say, mispronouncing my words and thinking it's agnostic, as he makes his way through Agostini and up into Hamilton here. I think we're going to see a mistake from the driver. Indeed, he goes very wide, carries too much momentum, and the car just decides to scythe away from him as he gets it all sorts wrong and drops all the way down to P20. That being disastrous there, but he's been able to settle the car. No major incident, just a little bit of a bruised ego as he makes his way back onto the Bentley straight in the replay, and right now he's making his way out of Nelson and through Bombhole corner once again. But dropping down the order, he was up into P16 at that point, but now in P20. But that does mean that the American of Hamby has made his way up into P19 as he comes out of Murray's corner and onto his onto lap number 11, I should really say. But the American right now, not having the best of races so far, but still in P19, and his target was P15 or higher come the end of the race, so he is doing a good job right now. He's hunting that down, and he'll get there, I'm sure, as we see that Driller, meanwhile in P17, experiencing a little bit of pressure right now. He's got Verdent behind him, as we do see, I think that is Hamby going wide out of turn 1, another victim of the Riches corner there. Indeed, a lot of drivers going from Riches to Rags, rather than from Rags to Riches, as they make their way through Montreal, and you can see drivers being caught out, the car's just not seemingly wanting to turn through with as much apex speed as the drivers would like. But meanwhile up front, I should tell you, as we saw that, I think we were about to see Chris Humphries behind go a little bit wide out the corner. I can tell you that Boardman is still being hounded by Art, and we've got Rampazzo in the rear of your camera shot there. Neither of the two drivers behind really putting the pressure on in terms of going for an overtake right now. I think Rampazzo in particular will just feel that he can spectate this. He's probably got a bowl of popcorn in the driver's seat with him, just watching the battle for the lead and thinking, how can I get involved in that right at the end when neither of them are looking or expecting me to? But right now our two leaders trading lap times. Again, that previous lap was a 57.0 for Boardman, it was a 56.8 for Art, and as they come across the timing line this time with some traffic ahead of them now, and I believe that is the traffic of John Doe, well not John Doe, Heisner ahead of the pair of them, I can tell you that our race leader at 57.3, Art at 57.4, so neither of them really are giving up in terms of those lap times, as we do see, I think that was Heisner going very wide, and Art going to the full length of the limits there, as Heisner rejoins on the circuit at the back of your picture, dodging the front runners and dodging them on the rejoin as well. That would have been fatal to any of them, and I think some swear words may have been exchanged if that had been the case. But we can see our top three running nose to tail, but Art making that mistake and now falling back into the clutches of Rampazzo as they make their way through Palmer corner here and through the end of sector 1. Now looking further back once again, I can tell you that Exposito is still being hunted, albeit we've got flashlights there for Heisner as he gets out the way of Scattergood, and that has opened up the best part of a half-second gap between the Spaniard and Scattergood there. Scattergood, the British driver, making his way up into the left-hander of Agostini. And as they make their way out the left-hander, the second of the hairpins, and into Hamilton corner once again, I think it will be the case as the drivers make their way through the corner that both of them will be hounding one another, but at the same time, particularly in the case of Scattergood, it'll be one where he's going to have to overdrive the car a little bit now in order to gain the time he's lost. And of course, at this point, I'd like to open the question up to those of you who are viewing via Twitch. Do free to let me know in the chat who you're supporting or who you expect is going to win the race. But right now, it's looking as though our top three are going to be our three potential race winners. And it'll be interesting to see who is on the top end of this battle for P4 come the end of it. Exposito, Scattergood, or could Crawshaw get into the mix here? And Crawshaw, Cameron Crawshaw, the British driver here from GT Marquez, just making his way into the left-hander here of Brundle and having a calm time of it right now. Not really putting any major laps in, but not making any major mistakes either. He has got Lipka in the rearview camera shot there, casually catching up to him, but it's not a huge rate. To give you an idea, Lipka in the previous lap was 4 tenths slower than Crawshaw, so the two drivers exchanging lap times. I think Crawshaw at this point just focusing on keeping the laps nice and calm and keeping them collected. Now, as we look back towards our race leaders right now, you can see that Rampazzo moving out the slipstream there of Art and just simply, I think, trying to get himself some clear air and avoid the overrun into turn one. But also probably sending a message to Art right now, who we're spectating, with regards to the fact that, look, I'm here. Art, it's the case as Art goes a little bit deep there, in fact, into Montreal, and Rampazzo has a brilliant flow into the apex there, and as a result, Boardman is gradually creeping away from this. The gap is now 1 second between P2 and P1, so I do think it's the case that Rampazzo now is starting to unleash a little bit of pace, as we have got 36 minutes of this race to go, and we're almost at the halfway point, but really, anybody in this top three could be the potential winner, but Boardman does seem to be the running array, as we see that Courtney is into the pits. Now, the pit window is not open here, so as a result, he'll be just parking up. He will not be permitted to pit, and I think Courtney has parked up, and this may be another retirement, or at least an unscheduled stop for Courtney, as we can see he's parked up here right now. But Courtney was doing a very good job. He was up in what I believe was P11 at the time, but that's going to drop him all the way down the order as a result, and that means a good number of drivers now will get promoted, and the one who benefits the most, of course, is Butters, now up into P11 as he makes his way about Agostini corner, and as he comes out of the hairpin corner, of course, he's now got Hamilton coming up and going into left-hander here of Hamilton. It will be the case that he can just flow through the left-hander rather naturally and now make his way up into the right-hander double combination. That is, of course, the run from Oggies to Williams and then onto the Bentley straight. But it is a case right now, the pit window has opened at the 35-minute mark. It's almost as if I can predict the future. No, perhaps I knew that a little bit in advance. But as our drivers make their way around through the right-hander, of course, it's going to be a case now, will we see anybody immediately dive into the pits? Well, what I can tell you is that Courtney, Shaw, Heisner and John Doe are all in the pits right now, but I think Courtney is a retirement. Heisner may also be a retirement here. Shaw is, I believe, a retirement. We can't see him in circuit, and Doe was the first to retire, so I think we've got 4 retirements right now, unless we may be wrong, unless Heisner's popped in as soon as that pit window is open. But let's wait and see if anybody else pits, as our last run on the circuit right now is Mo, making his way around the Agostini corner, of course, in P22, and trying to hunt down P21, but he's got the best part of a 17-second gap to Owens ahead of him. Owens, of course, Miles Owens from Lookout Racing, just making his way down the Bentley straight and chasing after Bernherger, who is up ahead of him, and not too far away is Bernherger as both drivers make their way along. And you can see, in fact, that Bernherger there just making his way, the German, out of Nelson corner. Haven't had a difficult race so far as Bernherger, but let's see what else he can do later on, as Pochiopen comes into the pits here for his scheduled stop, as does Chris Humphries. So we've got 2 drivers in so far, and Pochiopen did come in from what was at the time, I believe, P14. The Polish driver getting this stop in nice and early, but now dropping down the order, of course, and this is going to cost him a good number of places, as we also see that Driller has come into the pits from what was P18. So a number of drivers deciding to go for the pit stop. We've also got Kadziela, who's come into the pits, and he was coming in from what was effectively at the time P17. So a number of our back runners deciding to go in early for this pit stop, as they're all parking up right now. And meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that nobody has decided to pit out of our top 3, but they are getting ever closer, and we can see that Art having to go a little bit defensive versus Rampazzo, but also looking for an offensive position versus Boardman as they went up into the combination of Brundle and Nelson. Our top 3 in acceptable right now, but note that Rampazzo is now starting to put pressure on our top two, and I think it is the case that Rampazzo has been really biding his time in this one as we jump on board and look back from Boardman right now. Now, if you were Boardman, what would you do in this situation? Well, you're almost at the exact halfway point of the race. Do you decide to pit now and go for an undercut versus these guys, but risk potentially coming out in traffic? Should say Exposito and Scattergood or Crawshaw decide to stay out and you come out behind them, or do you go long here and try to overcut, or just go long as they would typically call it, and essentially try to outfox these drivers by avoiding the traffic, and they may come out in the traffic, of course. That's, of course, going to be going through Boardman's mind right now, as will be for Art and Rampazzo, but I suspect if Rampazzo can't find his way into this fight too closely, what Rampazzo may do is decide to pit before these two, because he's the one who's technically got the greatest potential gamble available to him, whereas Boardman and Art cannot afford to gamble the positions they've got. Rampazzo seems to be the stronger driver come the end of the stint. That's the one thing we can take away from what we've witnessed so far, is that Art seems to be the strongest of the three over the course of the start of the stint. Boardman is the most consistent over the stint, but Rampazzo comes alive right at the end as they go for Agostini once again. And we drop into the exterior camera, and I can tell you that in terms of pit stops right now, Chris Humphries was in the pit, and I believe that car will not be coming out the pits anytime soon. So Humphries has retired the car, and it will be the case that we have lost another driver. We have lost 5 drivers so far, 5 retirements, 21 cars still remaining out on circuit. As Ramsden comes into the pits, the British driver there from Ramsden Racing comes in from P17, and that's going to release Pochiopen, who went for the pit stop earlier on. That releases him back up into P16, and Hamby is now ahead of him, and he'll be looking to hunt down the American driver, who is the best part of, say, 6 seconds up the road right now as they make the way through a Montreal corner. As for our leaders, no change at the moment in terms of anybody pitting, so everybody in the top 10 right now deciding to stay out long. It's really only been drivers outside of the top 10 opting to pit early, and I think that just goes to show you that they're all waiting until one driver flinches, or it's the case that they're trying to make the first stint long so that way their second stint can be shorter and they can be more aggressive. As we take a sip of water and continue to watch Pochiopen. The full boost racing driver there making his way out of Agostini and now coming up into Hamilton, followed by Oggies. Now, meanwhile, I can tell you that Art has come into the pits from P2, so as a result, this will release Rampazzo. Now, Art, of course, having made the first stop here, he will be effectively undercutting as Exposito also comes into the pits here, and that releases Scattergood. Remember, Scattergood was behind the Spaniard here as they were battling out on circuit for P4. Scattergood continues in P3. Now, the question will be, does this work? As we see as well, Lipka's also in the pits, as is Crawshaw. We've also got Jordan in the pits, so everybody piling into the pits right now, and it is the case that we also see Sioffi. So our top 10 all immediately going as soon as Art decided to pit. It's a short stop from Art, as would be expected of most of our drivers, as he makes his way back out into the circuit, cutting across the dash line there, which I think is entirely legal given the fact it's a dashed and not a solid line. And he's in P4, but he has got a little bit of traffic here, but it is a back marker, and I believe that may be the case that is Butters ahead of him, and he'll be able to get past Butters very shortly. Although Butters right now, remember, is actually in for position, so Butters can afford, if he wanted to hold up Art should Art get close enough, because Butters has jumped up to P4 by not pitting so far. But the question will be, will Butters decide to fight it, or will he decide just to let the race leader, or the driver from the race leader pack, I should really say, come through? That will be the question going through Butters' mind right now, and Art, of course, will be praying that it's the latter that he's just let through, but we'll wait and see, as Marcel Webber has made his way up into P6, all the pit stops happening, but of course he's yet to pit. Now, Exposito, I should point out to you, having made that pit stop, has dropped all the way down to P11 as he makes his way through at turn number 2 then. And he does have some traffic ahead of him, as we see in the rear of your camera there. Is that Pochiopen? He makes a little bit of a hand fist there through the... That's not Pochiopen, that is, I think that's Miles Owens, who got it very wrong there, although I'm not 100% sure. I think that was Owens. Yep, that was Owens who got it wrong at Montreal, making his way out of turn 2 and just went extremely wide. So a mistake there, costing him some potential hold-up places as he makes his way out towards Agostini. But we can see ahead of him that Exposito starting to press on right now as Boardman and Rampazzo both come into the pits. Now, this is for the race lead, of course, because remember, the one driver who pitted before them is Art. And where is Art right now, you ask? Well, he's coming through Bombhole Corner, and then he's going up into Coram. Let's see if this has worked out, or whether the fact he got caught up a little bit behind Butters, albeit Butters, he's only really starting to catch up to the P4 driver right now through Corham Corner. Has that disrupted him at all, or has this undercut been a bit of tactical masterclass here? He makes his way out of the final corner, and then Scattergood continues to make his way around on the circuit, inheriting the lead. Boardman is coming out the pits right now. You can see on the left-hand side, you can see on the right-hand side, meanwhile, as Boardman cuts across the line there, it is the case that we have got Boardman. He's made his way up the order. Art, meanwhile, is going to jump up to P2, and meanwhile, Rampazzo comes out the pits down in P5, and look at that, the gap between them. The Italian driver there having a much longer pit stop by comparison and dropping down the order, albeit he'll be in P3 we expect once Scattergood and also Butters pit, but a long pit stop there for Rampazzo, costing him a good amount of time, and that's not what he would have wanted, in the fact that he has lost out his position in the battle for lead, and now he's got to try and find a way to catch up, or alternatively hope that Boardman and Art both battle quite heavily. But Boardman, with that pit stop there, getting away with it, and as a result now really pulling away from Art being the best part of about 4 seconds down the road from him, as they're both making their way now through the second part of Sector 2. Coming up into Hamilton is Art. And I think Art at this point will be thinking to himself, what have I got to do to be able to hunt down Boardman right now? And he's still got Butters in his way as well, but a lot of the pit stops have been completed, as we see that Miles Owens is in the pits. We've also got a driver coming out the pits right now, and I'm not 100% sure who that was. I think that might have been the rather red car of Calvin Freudent, but we'll wait and see. Yep, that was Freudent in particular, and you can see that he's moved up to P13 as a result of the pit stops, as Owens is in the pits right now down in P20 as they're making their way out of turn number 2 and down towards turn number 3 into Palmer Corner they go. But meanwhile, up front, with the fact we've still got the pit window open, albeit it's only for 1 minute 41, Scattergood comes into the pits for his scheduled stop. He had to pit at the end of this lap, and Butters will have to do the same, of course, given the fact that otherwise he'll miss the pit window and effectively receive a disqualification from the race. And so that would mean that Boardman will re-inherit the lead, or at least we believe, unless Scattergood has pulled an absolute miracle on the strategy. Never say never, it does happen. But one thing that is worth pointing out now, ladies and gentlemen, track temperature has come down to 19 degrees centigrade. It's getting a little bit cooler out on the circuit, and as a result of that, it means that our drivers will now take a little bit longer to get the tyres up to temperature should they have put on a new set of tyres in the pits, as we see Scattergood coming out here. And this gives you an idea, right? Scattergood has just started coming out of the pits, and meanwhile the driver who's just gone by the pits is Rampazzo. So you can see now that Rampazzo is almost equidistant to Scattergood as he is to Art. It was such a disastrous stop for the Italian, but perhaps he decided to go for a new set of tyres, or perhaps he needed to put some additional fuel in the car. Perhaps he'd been running the car light and needed to put the fuel in order to get going. It's going to secure him P3 at this rate, unless he makes a mistake, of course, but he'll probably be thinking, what if I've been able to get ahead of Art or Boardman? Could I have held them up and got them into a sticky situation? Meanwhile, one driver who's really benefited from all of this, meanwhile, is the P5 Polish driver of Lipka, who really has cut the order. Now, Butters, of course, was racing around as well, and Butters, it should be pointed out, has moved up to P6. So the drivers who went long on the strategy have found their way up the order, and Lipka in particular. To give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of who was up there previously, does anyone remember the fact it was Exposito in P4 versus Scattergood? Well, what if I told you right now that Exposito is down in P10, the Spanish driver having a long stop there, and as a result of that, now out of position and battling as the pit window closes. We've got 25 minutes of racing action to go, but Exposito now clinching and holding on to the top 10 rather than battling for the top 5, and this is not where he wanted to be. But the driver who benefited the most out of the pit window was Butters, who's all the way out to P6. He's jumped a huge chunk of the field with a bit of a strategic masterclass, and this is great to see as they continue to push around the circuit. And as we see Butters making his way now down the Bentley Straight here into left into right of Brundle to Nelson, we note that it is the case that Butters really having one of those situations right now where it's going to be, he's just got to keep it consistent. If he does so, this is going to be a really solid result for the Seawolf Net Race Motorsport driver here, as he makes his way out to Nelson, then up into Bombhole Corner. But of course, Crawshaw will have something to say about that, will the British driver, in the fact that he has been battling for the best part of a upper top 10 position, or in the midfield of the top 10 we should really say, around the P8, P7 area. He was in P6 when the pit stop window opened, so he's lost the place, and he'll be hunting down Butters, and we'll keep an eye on those lap times for you folks to give you an idea of how they're coming down and how they're getting close. And I can tell you come the end of this lap that as they both come across the timing line, with regards to Butters, who's a little bit off camera and further up the road right now, that Butters has just set a 204.3. Meanwhile, it's going to be the case from Crawshaw, who comes across the timing line. It's a 158.4. But remember that Butters had just come out the pardon me, had just come out the pit, so his time will be a little bit long, but we'll see on the next lap. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that the gap between Boardman and Art, you're looking at Boardman right now, our race leader, is approximately 3 seconds, and it is stabilising a little bit, although it has opened up on the previous lap, a 56.9 from our race leader. Art, meanwhile, who you're looking at right now, with a 57.3 by comparison. So the two drivers continue to exchange lap time and keeping that rivalry going, but Rampazzo right now are really out of this battle for the race lead and in that P3 position. Now we look a little bit further down the order, of course, and we can see at this point that we have got Webber making his way through Palmer Corner here, but he has got two drivers fast and furious behind him. It is Pochopian, and we've also got Exposito behind Pochopian here as we jump on board with our P10 driver, and we see how he's getting on right now. Riding on board from his dashboard, you can see that Exposito probably a little bit furious at the fact that he's dropped so far down the order as a result of the pit stop, and doing everything he can right now in order to catch up as quickly as possible as he makes his way through the left-hander of Hamilton now and into the double right combination that we all love and enjoy before it goes onto the Bentley straight. Coming out of the Williams corner very shortly, then you'll see it's coming up on that right hand now, and you can see just how hard Pochopian is having to work the car, but going a bit wide there, and this may be the opportunity for Exposito to go for the move. He's going to have the better run out the corner. He's going to stay in the slipstream initially, but Pochopian stays to the inside, going ultra defensive is the Polish driver by comparison as they make their way down towards the left into right combination of Brundle into Nelson. It's a battle on the brakes, and Pochopian is overtaken initially, but he comes back in front. He closes the door there, but can't shut it completely because Exposito had his nose in. But very good and clean and fair racing between these two. You love to see it as they make their way through Bomb Hole Corner once again, and now they make their way up into Coram. And Pochopian holding on for the time being, but Exposito getting ready to strike. I think he knows where he can attack, and we can see how Pochopian really is now holding up Exposito, who would love to go after Webber, the German driver, ahead. Meanwhile, just slowly pulling away off into the distance. And will it be the case that this time that Exposito is able to get the move done? As we jump to the external camera, you can see he's all over the back of the Polishman is the Spaniard. He's going to be on the outside for Riches. Can he be brave on the brakes, or will Pochopian go all in on the brakes? They're side by side through Riches corner here. Neither driver wanted to give up the position right now, and they're staying side by side up into Montreal corner. It's going to be a battle on the brakes here as they make their way in, and Exposito tries to go the long way round, but Pochopian says no and holds to the inside. It's brave stuff from the pair of them, but Exposito is still there, and surely now through the left-hander of Palmer here. There's only one way through the corner, and Pochopian goes to the cutback here, but he can't quite find it as Exposito parks it on the apex, gets it nice and collected, and is finally up into P9. He had to work hard here. Now he's got to hunt down the German ahead of him. Can the Spaniard do it? Can he get himself back up into P8 or perhaps even higher with 20 minutes to go? As you can see, Webber they're making a little bit of a mistake going through Agostini corner, and as he makes his way up into Hamilton right now, it will be the case that the German will feel the pressure bearing down on his neck very shortly. As we look further back right now, we can see Acton in P11 right now. Matt Acton, the British driver from the Century Porsche TCNO team, just making his way through Hamilton and up into the double right-hand combination of Palmer through, well, it's not Palmer, my apologies, Oggies through Williams. And it is the case as he makes his way for the two right-handers. He's got Jorda catching up to him quite rapidly here. Is Jorda, and I think it's going to be the case that Jorda will be looking for a potential attack into the combination of Brundle and Nelson very shortly. Will he be able to do it though? That is the alternative question as the Porsche Motorsport driver here making his way along, not close enough this time, but the number 6 car definitely looking at a very feisty in Jordan's very capable hands, and it'll be the case I think within the next lap or two he'll be going for a move there. As we see a little bit further back right now that we have got Calvin Foydent being attacked right now from Cioffi, the Swiss driver behind him. Of course, as we see that there's been a little bit of contact there, Galbacera, and what has happened there? Let's find out. Now, Galbacera making his way out onto the Bentley straight here. We're going to jump on board with the driver, and ahead of him, I'm not 100% sure who that is. I think that, in fact, might be a back marker. But as he makes his way down, what we're going to see here as they make their way through the left into right combination, well, that definitely wasn't driver ahead. I think it was a back marker who he was behind who just went a bit right, and he flashed his lights essentially to say, look, I'm coming through, please do not get in the way. So it wasn't a battle for position. We thought at first that might have been Jorda having a little bit of an incident, but not to be, as we can see that Jorda still all over the back of Acton and pushing hard, and Galbacera meanwhile pulling away from Foydent and Cioffi, look how close he is. We saw Galbacera making a mistake under braking into Montreal, locking up the brakes there, and mistakes like that are going to cost him a significant amount of time, albeit he has got a car between him and these two, and that will give him a little bit of coverage. As we note that Exposito has made his way up into P8, and we didn't quite catch that on camera for you, ladies and gentlemen, but we will take a look back and see how he was able to get it done. So as he's making his way then on to the lap number 21, you're going to see here that as they come across that timing line, it was the case that Webber was ahead initially, but as they went through Richie's here, Webber going a little bit deeper on the turn-in and missing the apex as a result. Meanwhile, Exposito getting a good run there, and then coming up into Montreal corner. Was it a standard braking into turn 2? It was. He went to the inside. Webber had no defence in play, and as a result of that, the Spaniard made the plays. A nice classic move up into Montreal corner there, and I think Webber realising that it was always going to happen that the Spaniards naturally faster than him around here, so rather than fight for the position, he just backed out of it. As you can see, they're going through Palmer and using the Spaniard as a pace car initially as they make their way back around the circuit. And as we wait for the replay camera to conclude very shortly, it should conclude within the next 10 to 20 seconds or so, ladies and gentlemen. We will take a look back up front and see what's happening with our race leaders. But Exposito there with a classic overtake there into Montreal, and the Spaniard doing everything he can right now to get himself back up into that top 5. You can see how far he's pulled away over the course of lap 21. He's really on a mission right now, as Boardman being reeled in a little bit by Art, it should be pointed out. On the previous lap, Boardman setting a 57.2 versus Art's 57.1, but they are starting to trip over some back markers right now, which may affect their racing as well. Looking a bit further down the order, we can see that Galbacera, meanwhile, has got a nice bit of space to drivers behind, but Foydan still on a huge amount of pressure right now from Siofi right now. The Swiss driver behind him trying to find a way through, the Swiss being in the yellow and black car, meanwhile Foydan being in the red and black car by comparison. That's how you tell the two apart. You can see just both going a little bit deep into Montreal. In fact, some contact on the rear there Foydan, as you could see that Siofi had the pace to make the corner but just wasn't able to. He's had to back out of it as a result. There may be a little bit of damage to the front of that car right now. Meanwhile, further behind, I can tell you that Dilla right now in P18 battling with Hamby. And in fact, I think Hamby there making a little bit of a mistake. Or is that Hamby or is that Bernherger? I believe that is Hamby that he was battling with as we look back to him. Hamby being overtaken there through turn number 2. So Hamby dropping down to P18, Driller up to P17. Making his way up the order right now, and the American dropping a place as they make their way up into Agostini once again. Now, as they look further around, when we take a look further up the order, we can see that Lipka right now running a very solid race in P5, having a peaceful time as he makes his way through Murray's corner on towards lap number 23. The drivers making their way onto that lap right now. Our leaders being quite a bit further up the road by comparison with Lipka, but the Polish driver having a good day at the office so far, and with 16 minutes to go, we'll be looking to finish this one on a high. What about Crawshaw here, however? Well, Butters, to give you an idea, you can see Crawshaw at the rear view camera shot there. Butters in P6, and again, running a very solid race right now is the Seawolf Net Race Motorsport driver as they make their way into turn 1, but I think Crawshaw will be looking to try and catch up to him. Although on that previous lap, Butters with a 57.5, Crawshaw with a 58.1. It may be the case that the wheels are coming off the bus a little bit for Crawshaw, and he's perhaps going to have to settle for that P7 position as he makes his way down towards turn at number 2 right now. And I can tell you behind him that Exposito is gradually catching up to him. He took 5 tenths out of him on the previous lap, but the gap between these two is in the best zone of approximately 8 to 10 seconds, so Exposito's got to go some. I don't think there's going to be enough laps for the Spaniard to catch up to Crawshaw by the end of the race. But looking at further down the order once again, we can see that Acton has started to pull away from Jorda a little bit, so Jorda was looking quite strong, but seems to have made a mistake on the previous lap or got it wrong, because the British driver has opened up the window of approximately 8 tenths of a second, and that just gives them a little bit of breathing room here as they make their way into Palmer corner. Through turn 3 they go to complete sector 1 once again, but you can see how Jorda gets close but then just cannot quite find a way to get past once he gets close enough, and that's what Acton's been very good at. He's been able to maintain that consistency, that composure, and not feel the pressure from Jorda behind as they make their way through Agostini and now come up towards Hamilton. As we do see, we have had a change of position here, and Siofi has finally got the move done on Foydan. But I think by the looks of things, he may have gone wide. We did see a yellow flag briefly pop up, and I am hearing in my ear right now that Foydan actually gone wide out of turn number 3, out of Palmer corner, and that's how Siofi got ahead of him. So Siofi up to P14, and Foydan, who we're looking at, down to P15. As our drivers continue to make their way around the circuit, we can tell you that we have still got out on circuit 21 drivers as it currently stands. In fact, 21 drivers racing out on the circuit. We had 5 retirements, and with 15 minutes to go right now, Boardman are leading. He has got a very nice gap to Art. That gap has opened up to approximately 4 seconds now for the British driver, and I think it is plain sailing unless there's any technical issues. Alternatively, any mistakes are made, Boardman is going to win this one, but we will wait and see. We have still got 14 minutes. We have approximately got 7 to 8 laps remaining for most of our drivers here, so anything can happen until that checkered flag is waved. As we see Scattergood right now doing a very solid job in P4, just simply holding on to his position and not worrying too much. And Scattergood really has been a bit of a revelation in the fact he decided to go as long as possible in his opening stint, and by going long, avoided getting caught up in traffic when he came out the pits, and he was able to jump Exposito, who is now down in P8, and really just find himself a nice bit of clean space on track to race with. And it has worked out very nicely for the P4 man, the number 9 car, as we look further down the order once again. And Acton under pressure. Now Jordan, remember we said last time that Jordan can get close, but he wasn't able to find a way around. Will Jordan be able to do something with this time as they make their way up towards Palmer Corner? Will it be the case that Jordan can find a better place to get the launch, or will he fall back once again like he did previously? Alejandro will be pushing hard, I'm sure, in the cockpit of that car as they make their way up into Agostini, and you can see Jordan's going to go for the movies on the inside. There's yellow flags out, however, and Jordan goes to the inside here, but he goes very deep into the hairpin corner. As we see, we've got dirt across the circuit briefly there, but it looks as though Jordan's got the move done, and we resume the racing. But Jordan overtaken under yellow flags. I'm not sure if he'll have to give that place back, but he does go wide out of Hamilton, and that means that Acton is now going to be along the inside here as they make their way through the double right-hand combination and before the Bentley straight. But it is the case that Jordan's holding on for the time being, but Acton putting a huge amount of pressure on Jordan right now, and these two drivers really working hard tooth and nail to fight for that P11 position. And they've only got Pochopian only about 2 seconds up the road right now. They can see him. Will they work together to catch up to him, or will they focus more on this battle for P11? I think they're both going to want this battle as they come up into the combination of Brundle and Nelson. Acton looking to the inside into Brundle, but he can't quite find it, so he's trying to put Jordan under pressure to go deep into Nelson, but Jordan says no, he doesn't make the mistake. And Galvesera in the rear of your camera shot now in P13. He's catching up the number 22 driver as they make their way through Bombhole Corner and into Coram before the run out of Murray's onto the straight. But you can see how Acton really coming to life, and it seems that Jordan is the stronger of the two in Sector 1, but Sectors 2 and 3, that's where Acton just has so much more strength by comparison. He goes a bit deep out of Murray saying that, and he's cost himself a bit of time as Jordan is able to pull away and open up that gap. So I think the move is done for the time being. Galbacera will be looking to get in on this shortly versus Acton, but Jordan up into P11 as he makes his way through Rich's Corner on his 25th lap. We look further down the order, and what I can also tell you now, that right now we have got Ferdent, who's just making his way around in P15, a lonely P15 now. He has been dropped by Sioffi, the Swiss driver. You can see at the background of your camera there as he makes his way up towards Montreal Corner, and he'll just be looking to try and keep it consistent and benefit from the mistakes of others. But we'll wait and see what our P15 driver is able to achieve a little bit later on, as we do also see that Hamby right now making his way up towards Montreal here. And quite a way off of battling with anyone right now is the American. Only 2 places out where he would like to finish, but he's had a very difficult race, and I think he'll just be wanting to bring the car home at this point. It has been a day and a half at the office, and it's been a hard day's work indeed, as we see Rampazzo here clearing one of the back markers right now. I believe that may be Owens, who he's just cleared, and now making his way through Murray's Corner and out onto his 26th lap. But our race leaders, just to give you an update regarding them, they are separated still by approximately 4.5 seconds, so no change there, and it really is the case right now that our top 3 have separated out considerably, although Scattergood, I should point out to you folks, is starting to catch up a little bit to Rampazzo. The gap between the two of them right now is the best part of approximately 6 to 7 seconds, but it's the case that Scattergood has been catching up very gradually to Rampazzo, but they have had back markers to clear, as has Rampazzo, the Italian. So as a result of that, it may be the case as they're clearing traffic, the gap is essentially fluctuating based on the traffic. You can see him briefly there in the rear of your camera shot. So not too much change right now, as we see that Jordan is continuing to pull away from Acton just a little bit as they come through Corin, but Galbacera now really in that position on the attack versus Acton as he's trying to find his way up into P12 before the race is over. 10 minutes to go. Can Galbacera, the Italian, find his way past Acton? We'll wait and see. The number 22 car, of course, will be feisty in the hands of the Italian. We know he's a quick driver, but we also know he's a very fair driver when it comes to overtakes, but definitely gaining on Acton right now as they make their way up into Rich's Corner, and Acton really struggling in turn 1. You can see the speed difference between the two of them, and it's the case that once he gets to sectors 2 and 3 he's okay, but it's in sector 1 where Acton just seems to disappear off the pace board entirely as they make their way through Montreal Corner then. And note that in front of them they have got Jordan, and they've also got Weber being up in P10 right now, the German driver, the final driver in our top 10 positions, and looking to hold on Will he be able to? Well, with Jordan going a bit deep there through Palmer Corner, I think it will be the case that he'll be able to hold on for at least this lap. But you can see he is being reeled into what could potentially be a four-way fight for P10 come the end of the race. Doing everything he can right now, whether to hold on there as we look up towards the helicam right now. And you can see behind him the gap between Jordan and Acton. It's stabilised, and that's about a 1 second gap between the two of them, although Jordan making some little mistakes here and there. But then when we look back to Acton, you can see how Galvesera closing up under braking every single time. Galvesera working it hard on the brakes, but Acton being a bit more gentle on the brakes and getting the better flow line through the apexes of the corners, particularly there out of Oggies up into Williams, getting a nice run. And that's giving him just enough space to be safe right now as he holds on to the position and continue to make his way round. As they continue to press on, of course, we look a little bit further up towards our race leaders right now. Although, actually, I say that, we're not going to jump away. Look how Galvesera is really closing out under braking into Brundle and then Nelson. And I do think Acton is going to be exposed here as he comes onto the straight, the centre straight, of course. And Acton is slow out of Murray's typically from what we've seen. But perhaps he's got some magic lined up as they go through Coram. As they go through the corner then, will it be the case that Acton gets it now this time? We look from behind on Acton's car right now, right on board with the P12 driver. As they come out the corner, it looks like Galvesera actually had the weaker run out the corner this time. You can see how far he's dropped back. So Acton getting it right this time and being able to pull away. So it's not the case that Galvesera isn't prone to a few mistakes or so, although it's very hard to see where the mistake is. But you can see under braking, this is where Galvesera is just closing up so much. And of course they're going to close up under braking naturally, but watch here as they go into Montreal. You'll see Galvesera literally come up full size on the screen, and as they make their way through the corner, you can see coming out of Montreal, Acton just cannot get the power down as aggressively, and as a result he actually experiences a little bit of snap oversteer that causes him to ride the curbs. As the camera very shortly switches round to Palmer Corner, we'll see that Galvesera is past. We missed that because of the camera having to rotate, but he goes a little bit deep into turn number 3. Will it be the case that Acton's able to fight his way back on the inside into Agostini? He does. He goes for it on the brakes here, but has he gone a little bit too far on the brakes? As you can see that Acton drifting a little bit wide there, and as a result Galvesera out the inside of him into Hamilton Corner. There's the space for the two of them to go, but they're going to have to lift to do it as they make their way through. Galvesera there taking that inside line, and I think Galvesera has now finally got it done as they make their way through Oggies and up into Williams Corner here. And I think it is going to be the case that Galvesera has made his way up into P12, and unless Acton can get a really strong run out into the Bentley straight here, he's not going to have the comeback. Let's wait and see. Don't count him out yet. Of course, we've got Sioffi catching up in the rear of your picture. He's only approximately 2.5 seconds behind right now as they make their way down the long run of the Bentley straight up towards Brundle into Nelson. And I think it is going to be the case that Galvesera has got this done for the time being, but we'll wait and see if it kicks off between the two of them once again a little bit later. Meanwhile, in P4, I can tell you that Scattergood right now just holding on to that P4 position very comfortably, although he has got a couple of back markers who he's overtaken recently. Bernherger there ahead of Humphreys. Well, I believe that's not Humphreys, my apologies, that's Miles Owens. And Owens behind him, of course, trying to chase after the position. This is the battle for P19, the German ahead of Owens, as they make their way down towards Agostini Corner. Once again, coming hard on the brakes, neither driver really in a position to battle right now. But meanwhile, we look back up towards our racing drivers up towards the top 10, and we can see that the German of Weber in P10 right now really under a lot of pressure from Jordan, and with 5.5 minutes to go here, you do have to wonder whether the German's going to be able to bring home that top 10 position or whether he will drop down to P11. Perhaps he can fight enough and defend enough to bring Galvesera and Acton into the mix. They would both love a crack at P11 as a minimum, of course, because they were both there earlier on, but it will be the case right now that Marcel Weber really under pressure right now. The Eiffel Power Racing driver, the number 62 car, will try to throw everything, including the book and the table and the kitchen sink, in order to hold on to that P10 position. I'm sure with only those 5 minutes, it will mean a lot to him given how difficult this race has been for the German driver as they make their way through Agostini. Now, meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Boardman, you can see there are in the rear of your camera shot, Boardman still leading this race, and he has got a gap still of approximately 4 seconds. Trading lap times with Art right now, as Art's coming across the line. Art a tenth of a second faster on lap that, but I don't think it's going to be the case that we're going to see a close battle unless Boardman makes a major error at this point. I think all he's got to do now is tone it down a tiny bit and bring that car home. But meanwhile, in that battle for P10, I can tell you that Jordan is getting closer and closer to the back of Weaver as they make their way down towards the combination once again of Brundle and Nelson. And will it be the case that Webber is going to be under assault this time? No, Jorda's just there though, and you can see how much he closes under braking. Meanwhile, Galvasera by comparison with Acton behind him right now, pulling Acton along a little bit, and then you've got Cioffi getting ever closer to the back of Acton behind them. These guys are really coming close together as they're making their way now into Coram. Now looking back towards our P17 driver here of Hamby, by comparison the American driver, he's got Driller behind him right now. Driller the best part of what is as we look a little bit further around. We can see that Driller is actually quite a way back. Hamby's got some drivers between himself and that, being out of position on a different lap. So Hamby just pushing on. And then we have still got the battle between Bernherger and also, I believe that is Owens behind him there. Owens in the pink and green car. This is the battle for P19. Two of our closest drivers out on circuit right now. And whilst they may not be battling for a top 10 position, I'm sure they're enjoying this little battle for P19. And it's a good bit of entertainment for themselves to keep their feet in as they're making their way through the double right-hander. Although Art, I believe, is coming through behind them right now to lap them. And will want them to get out of the way because they're effectively holding him up as they make their way then through the left-hander here of Williams, and they go onto that straight once again, and you can see immediately Owens getting out of the way, and Bernherger will have to do the same very shortly with the blue flags being waved. But meanwhile, Webber by comparison just holding on right now. In fact, I think Jorda's got the move done. Let's see how it happened. So as they're making their way then down towards Murray's Corner, so this was a minute ago. I think this was a long sequence. You can see that Jorda behind right now is there. As we jump on board with Jorda to give you a feel for what exactly happened, you'll see that Jorda is going to have the slipstream here up into Riches, but he's not close enough. In fact, he backs out a little bit there, going up towards Riches. I think he's going to try and set himself up for Montreal, and that's where it probably happened. And you can see, in fact, Weber made a mistake. He went wide at Riches, and this is where Jorda just had the overlay. He had the momentum, and he's going to look to go on the inside under braking, and then he gets it done under braking into Montreal. A classic move, very nicely done by Jordan to keep the car nice and steady. And did Webber try and make a comeback there going through Palmer Corner? It looks as though he was too far back to make the potential comeback into Palmer. So I think once they made their way out of this corner and out of Sector 1, the story was told, it was all sold and done, and it was the case that Jordan is now up into P10, the last of our top 10 positions, as the replay camera should jump back any moment now, and we'll take you back to the live action any second. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, and with 2 minutes to go right now, the closest battles on the circuit, well, we do have Lipka right now, who has got a couple of back markers who he's just passed. That was Lipka lapping the Bernherger and Owens battle. It was not the case that that was our artist further up the road, but really our top 5 very spaced out right now, and I think all just wanting to nurse the car home with 1.5 minutes remaining. We are going to see Boardman here make his way down the Bentley Straight here, and he will have one more lap after this, so he will go on to a 31st and final lap as the track temperature continues to come down here. It's now 17 degrees locally at the track, and it's 14 degrees in the ambient air temperature. So those temperatures really coming down right now, and it's about keeping the heat in those tyres as much as possible. Of course, if the tyres are a little bit too hot, the lower track temperatures may help cool them a little bit, but our drivers are just making their way through, and Boardman takes us onto what is suspected to be our final lap as he comes out of Murray's Corner here, and I think it is going to be a solid end to the race for Boardman. He's led it from start to finish and had a very solid run as he comes onto that start line then to go on to the final lap. But right now we see Bernherger getting it very wrong there out of Nelson and going wide, and that's going to promote Miles Owens up into P19. He'll be happy with a little place gained right at the end there, as all our drivers now making their way onto their final laps. Well, it'll be the final lap is lap number 31 for our leaders. And the closest battles out there on circuit right now, well, really, with the end of the Bernherger and Owens episode, it will be the case right now. I think most of our battles have spaced out enough that we're not going to see anything too drastic occur from this point onwards, as all of our drivers are making their way around the circuit right now. And I think our first set of drivers to come across that timing line to complete their race, well, I think Crawshaw is going to get on to a 31st lap as he comes across the line here. He will indeed. So as we see here, it's going to be Exposito who will be the first of our drivers, I think, to come across the line and conclude the race. Coming home in P8, a difficult race today for Exposito, but coming across the line in P8, and then it will be the case that Pochopian In fact, I think they're all expected to complete this. So they're going on to their final laps now. And what I can tell you is that our race leader right now, well, he has had a fantastic race as he makes his way down the Bentley straight here. He's led it from start to finish. And it really has been a case that whenever Art or Rampazzo got close to him and put the pressure on, Boardman has had a story to tell and be able to hold them off through some very consistent driving. And indeed, he doesn't quite hold the fastest lap. That's going to go to Rampazzo with a 56.526. But still, it doesn't matter for Boardman. He'll be very pleased with this with only 2 corners to go. Coram coming up right now, the extended right-hander, and then he's got the left-hander of Murray's to go. Only 1 more corner then separating him from the win of the 718 Cayman GT4 Cup event, and we can see that Boardman comes along the line to take a deserved win. Congratulations to the British driver. He wins today's event by approximately 4 seconds ahead of Art. Art will be coming home in P2, a valiant effort from Art, but not quite able to pick up the win today. And then in P3, Rampazzo, he'll have missed out on the pit stop. The Italian will be kicking himself for what was a difficult pit stop, but still, to come home on the bottom step of the podium, no mean feat. Well done to Rampazzo for rounding off our podium. And then in P4, it will be Scattergood, who put in a solid effort today, the British driver, getting the pit stop just right to jump the fight for P4. And then in P5, a valiant effort from the Polish driver of Lipka, a surprise P5 perhaps, but a brilliant one all the same. And Butters bringing it home in P6 in the end, jumping a huge chunk of the field through strategy, as we see Owens there coming home in P19 as well. And then Crawshaw not able quite to be able to challenge for P6 or P5 in the end, but I think Crawshaw will be pleased with the fact a top 10 finish solidly up there for the British driver. And then it will be Exposito, where it was a difficult race for the Spaniard in the end, with that pit stop dropping him all the way down the order and putting it in amongst drivers, but he fought his way back up to P8, and that will be pleased with. And then it's going to be Pachopian bringing home P9. The Polish driver had to have to fight all the way for that position, but a brilliant job by them. And our top 10 being ran off by Jorda, just getting past Weber in the end. Battling hard was Jorda, and very happy with that result. You can see by Weber in P11, Galbacera in P12, Acton in P13, holding off Sioffi in the end. And then we've got, after the Swiss, we've got Feuerdent, who makes his way across the line in P14. And it's going to be Ramsden in P15, who makes his way out of the final corner right now to complete his race. All of our drivers here getting in that 31st lap, as we see Ramsden just making his way out the final corner, having a quiet race. We didn't see too much of him, to be fair, but still, with everything that was going on, I think it was still a solid effort there as he comes across the line to complete the final lap. And then it will be Hamby, who in the end comes home in P15 when all is said and done. He'll be very pleased with that. That was his target. And then we've got Driller, who's coming home in P16. Well, in fact, our timing screens have just been updated. Hamby in P17 there, but fantastic racing from the drivers, and well done to all of them. And indeed, what a fantastic race from all of our drivers, and a valiant effort from everyone taking part. And I think with that, really, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure to broadcast, and I hope you've enjoyed watching the Next Gen Racing Porsche Cayman 718 GT4 Cup event, the track day event. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check out their official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or their official Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners once again, through which this wouldn't be possible without the support, SimGrid, who have helped us out. And speaking of SimGrid, what I can tell you folks, if you are a member of the Assetto Corsa Competizione PC community and you are looking for a championship to take part in, we do have coming up at the end of this month the PC European GT3 Series, as hosted by Next Gen Racing in partnership with the SimGrid, and you can see the entry details there, whereby we've got a 1 week pre-season qualifying, but it's coming up at the end of this month. More details available on the SimGrid website, of course, and also on the Next Gen Racing official website. But as we come back to the wrap-up then, it's goodbye from me. I've been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And it's goodbye from us, the team at Next Gen Racing. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.